Steel boots stomping, crashing the floor. Two wild Yinzers kicking through the door. Loud like a jag-off at a pins game fight. Brace yourself, this ride ain't polite. Dum Yinzers, loud and proud. Heads in the clouds, voices in the crowd. Chaos brewing, they don't play nice. Hold on to your iron and grab your prime anti-slice. Tales from the burg with a hint of mayhem. Pierogi powered, nothing can constrain them. Knocking back stories like an icy cold brew. You never know what these two might spew. Dum Yinzers, loud and proud. Heads in the clouds, voices in the crowd. Chaos brewing, they don't play nice. Hold on to your iron and grab your prime anti-slice. From the bug with a hint of mayhem. Pierogi powered, nothing can constrain them. Knocking back stories like an icy cold brew. You never know what these two might spew. Dum Yinzers, loud and proud. Heads in the clouds, voices in the crowd. Chaos brewing, they don't play nice. Hold on to your iron and grab your prime anti-slice. Rivers collide where the laughs always flow. Black and gold thunder everywhere they go. The madcap kings breaking every mold. With two Dum Yinzers, the stories don't get old. Two Dum Yinzers, loud and proud. Heads in the clouds, voices in the crowd. Chaos brewing, they don't play nice. Hold on to your iron and grab your prime anti-slice.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. Welcome back to the Two Dum Yinzers. This is episode 862. 222. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Glad to be back after a little fart yesterday happened. Some internet issues going on in the area. I do apologize. I'm sure people in the Pittsburgh area certainly understand, but across the country, I do want to explain and just apologize. Welcome back. Glad to see everybody this morning. Everybody on the board. Tyrone, my dog. What's up, brother? Jen, good morning. Always great to see Jen from Wisconsin. Tortilla, what's up, bro? He says, just when I think I'm done, they sign a Pro Bowler from 6 years ago. Damn it, Rooney. You money-making cuck. Cody says this. Good morning, Ryan and Yinzer Joe. What's up? What up, Yinzers? What's going on, everybody? Great to see you back this morning. Glad to be back again. It wasn't by choice that we weren't here yesterday, but a lot has happened between then and now, and a lot of things to talk about. This is going to be a good show. I do hope that you stick around, guys. Just a couple things before we do get started. The rumors flying on top of the obvious things. Okay, let me start with this. We gain a receiver, we lose a DB, we have controversy in the locker room, we have former players firing shots at current players. We're going to get into all that and so much more today. Good morning, Lindsay. Good morning, Tyrone. Everybody on the board, gang, everybody, what's going on? Glad to see you. It is hump day. I'm glad to be here. And again, as I said, we have a special day today. And I'm not just saying that. It was Ryan's choice. He wasn't here. You know what? I was sitting right where I'm at, and I am wondering why I'm having internet issues. And I thought it was Mike, of course, because again, this is what my executive producer does. But you know what? It wasn't the case. There was some Xfinity work going on in the area, and I do apologize, but it is great to be back. Ralph, hello. Great to see you, my friend, on the board. Always great seeing Ralph Williams. Everybody, welcome back. This is, of course, week 14. This is Ravens week. A lot to get into, guys, because after we do hit some of these bigger stories, we're going to turn it 180 and try to figure out what it is that we have to do to stay in this thing, and if it's even possible to stay in this thing. So Ravens this weekend, guys, were 6.5-point road dogs coming in against the first place Ravens at 6-6, and we are also at 6-6. So it's going to be a pretty interesting week. Again, a lot of things to get into. Jen says, tell them to shut the fuck up and play good ball. But I do listen, guys. This is a special show, and I want to tell you, I got something a little special lined up for you today since we missed yesterday. I thought, you know what, I got to do something for. I got to do something. I appreciate that, Cody. You're the goat. You're the goat. But without further ado, I do have a special guest today. They're going to join us for a little while. Feel free to continue commenting on the terrible board today and ask the special guest if there's anything that you do have any questions that you may have. I'm sure that they would love to hear from you and they would love to answer the questions. Tyrone, no, you were the GOAT, my man. But without further ado, I do want to introduce my guest today, guys. I think you're going to like it. I think you're going to love him, as a matter of fact. Today is a young man, roughly my age. So yes, he's a very young man. I'm going to say this. Welcome, everybody, to the show, and welcome Garrett Webster, everybody, the son of Mike Webster. There it is, guys. Did I promise I was going to make it up to you? Did I promise? Look at this right here, Mike Webster, straight from the bag, right there, my man, in the screen next to me. Garrett, my friend, how you doing, sir?
Good. You can tell I'm Mike Webster's son with a hairline. So I was worried when you said we're around the same age. I don't know if that's what I have to look forward to when I look at your picture or what here.
Hey, if you're lucky, you might be able. Now, if you don't mind me asking, we're roughly the same age. We're how old are you?
41.
Okay. So Aaron Rodgers just.
If you say you're younger than me, I'm gonna worry if you what water you're drinking, if it comes out of the Monongahela or what here, because
right. I'm
gone terribly wrong.
I turned 47 this summer, but I'm gonna stick
good.
I'm gonna stick with the 40, and then as I said, it's encouraging because you never know, the beard might come in and
the beard's epic. My beard just curls; it doesn't grow out.
Right.
I wish it did, but it doesn't. My dad's beard, just when he did grow one, it would just curl, and my family, for whatever reason, facial hair it gets nice and bushy. It doesn't get long.
Right.
Which is just the worst. If you're going to grow a beard, you want it, to get down there.
Garrett, no, we thank you so much for coming on today. I know everybody's going to appreciate you being on, guys. And again, if you have anything for Garrett Webster, again, Mike Webster's boy right here on the screen with me. Just throw your questions or comments, anything up on the terrible board today. He'll be happy to answer for you. But I have a lot of things to talk about, Garrett, today with you. Of course, your dad being the Iron, Mike Webster, my man. There's nothing that's more exciting to me than to be able to say, you know what, we can't have Mike, unfortunately, but you know what, we could get some inside stories about the man from his one and only flesh and blood and his son. And you know what, I'm glad you're here today. I'm glad we're going to get to talk about your father. I'm going to talk a little bit about Cam just passing his record as far as games played with the Steelers and a few other things as far as the state of this Pittsburgh Steelers team right now. We won't keep you too long, but I do want to squeeze you for some info today. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, my man. Great to have you. So just let's off the top. Let's start with this: the Pittsburgh Steelers, the current state of the Steeler team. Where did this go wrong? When did this go wrong? And is there any foreseeable timeline on when this thing might get turned around? Because again, bringing in a bunch of bigger names this year, a new offense, all these things were supposed to be the answer, and we're going in the wrong direction. Obviously, we're 3 games worse than we were last year at this point. I think we were 9 and whatever it was. 9-3, matter of fact, this time last year. Garrett, in your opinion, because of course it's ingrained in your blood to be a Steeler fan, what's it going to take, and when did this all go wrong?
I mean, I think that with the thing is, and as Steeler fans, we think so much about what's going on right now and stuff like that. But if you go back and you really look at the last three off seasons, even back to when, that year that Kenny Pickett, his first year as a full starter after his rookie year, pretty much going into the year, all the fans and pretty much everybody thought the moves they made going into the season were the right moves. And I think that personnel wise, because I think at the end of the day, you got to break this thing down into two situations. That's coaching and it's the players. And I think from the players' perspective, you look at Omar Khan and the moves he made, most everybody thought, other than this year, maybe getting another wide receiver or two, everybody everybody was in agreement. That's something that they should have done. And I think everybody, kind of agrees with that. And obviously in retrospect, they should have gotten another wide receiver going into this year. But, everybody thought their drafts were really good, and they've produced a couple good draft picks, to come in and stuff like that. Some guys haven't done as well as we would have liked, Broderick Jones, some of the linemen, stuff like that. But, personnel wise, going into the season, we all felt pretty good. I always remember, that game we had at home, the home opener against San Francisco. I think that was Kenny Pickett's first start. I remember going into that game, even personally as a fan, because that was the preseason we went undefeated.
Yes.
And our offense looked great. And, I remember that game, and I think it was, I can't remember, weren't we down 14-0 at the end of the first quarter or something like that?
It was bad,
yeah. It was right away. It just was bad. It's kind of like ever since that point, it's just been a continuous, state of things just not going right. So, from the actual building of a team, I think that, and we'll get to the coaching here in a second. I think that building the team, they're in this weird position where, are we close? Because their win total gets to enough to the point where they think, okay, we're close. If we add this couple guys, and if you look at the last few Super Bowl winners, going into the playoffs, other than the Chiefs, you going into the playoffs, those teams weren't the teams that you thought, oh, they'll be in the Super Bowl for sure.
You're right.
Even in the Eagles, going into the playoffs last year, everybody thought the Eagles would be tough, but I don't think anyone thought, oh, the Eagles are definitely not just going to go to the Super Bowl and win it, but dominate everybody on their way. They get hot. And I think the thing about the NFL nowadays is it's try to get hot going into the playoffs and it's not continued success throughout the year. And I think some of that is the 17-game schedule, and how injuries are nowadays and stuff like that. But I think that it was, and you can argue all day whether the GM and the ownership is right to think that they were that close. But I think that was the game plan is get an Aaron Rodgers, get a Russell Wilson, get one or two guys, hope the offensive line and stuff like that, and the defense plays up to their capabilities in hopes that when they get in the playoffs, we just get hot. But then if you really dig down to it, and this is where it comes down to the coaching and kind of that, confluence or synergy between the coaching and the players, I think that's really where the mistake was made. And first off, I'll say, I like Mike Tomlin. I do like him as a coach, but I think he's just like the players. He's not in the right situation. Tomlin is a coach that you do one of two things. You either give him a really young team to motivate and to kind of play above, that was something that Cowher really specialized in.
Yeah.
You gave him younger, he wasn't a great X's and O's guy. He was a special teams coach. He was a motivator. That was his specialty. And I think the thing is with Cowher, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Cowher's not a great coach. He was, but people forget too how the opinions people had on Cowher before he won that Super Bowl. If he doesn't win that Super Bowl, that miracle Super Bowl in Super Bowl 40, his legacy is a lot different in Pittsburgh,
right?
Than people think it is, because he blew it with a lot of good teams. Yeah, he got in the playoffs, but he blew games, a lot of big games as well. And he had I would argue, a lot more defensive talent than Tomlin's had, during his run in. And the thing I respect about Tomlin, the reason I think he's a good coach is I think he is one of those coaches, and you hear it too on the interviews and stuff like that. He lets the coordinators and the coaches around him coach, and he kind of oversees everything. And that's what Chuck Noll did. That's what Bill Belichick did. That's what usually the great coaches do. You don't see these guys who, other than maybe Bill Walsh, you don't see the specialized coach, the guy who's, let's say, an offensive genius or something like that. Every once in a while you'll see a guy like, let's say, Andy Reid. But Andy Reid's learned over time that his job, even though he may be the offensive guy, it's to let all the coaches do all their things and stuff like that and kind of oversee them, overrule when they need to overrule. And I think that's where you run into an issue with Tomlin now. Is I think the one thing that you can really knock on Tomlin is his choices of coordinators have not been the best. He's loyal and I'm all for loyalty, but you saw it with Brian Canada. You saw it with their defensive coordinator now, who's been terrible for years. You've seen it with their offensive line coach. There's talent on the offensive line. Guys aren't first round picks or second round picks in the NFL just by pure luck. I think that there's things that I watch. I remember watching, the last 2 or 3 years, obviously I watched the offensive line a lot, and it's like they don't coach these guys at all in what they're doing, and it's the same thing when you watch the defense. You watch our secondary and our linebackers, we're running the same schemes, which is fine, but the guys in the middle aren't guys that clearly they don't look like they're playing, and I don't want to say having fun, but playing through reaction, whether then I'm supposed to go to this spot here
Right.
and then turn around. It's not, if you go back and you watch any great team, whether you're talking about the Steelers of the 70s, the 49ers, the Cowboys, whatever, those guys, you're not seeing them think while they play. You're seeing them play a game.
That's what I always say. Don't think. Let the guys go out and play the game. Once you start thinking, you're
me,
over.
that comes down to your coordinators and your coaches, your positions and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
And that was one of the things my dad said when he was playing, and when I got to high school, and that was really where I got, I don't want to say the knowledge of my dad, but he really had more interaction with me, and he really talked to me more about how things were when they were coached and stuff like that.
Right.
And he would say the worst coaches are the ones who let you go out there thinking. They should let you go out there and play. When you're on the field, you shouldn't be questioning what you're doing and stuff like that. When you watch the Steelers defense now, and I think you've seen this for years, especially over the middle and underneath, and this comes to where obviously with the middle linebackers, the safeties or whatever situation they're kind of running, you see those guys, and this is why every quarterback kills us over the middle. Those guys who are supposed to be dropping in and staying underneath, or I don't know exactly what their scheme is, they look like they either have no confidence in what's going on and are debating whether to break off and do their own thing, or like I said, they're looking run to point A, turn around and guard that position. And they're not playing the ball. They're not playing their opponent. They're just, going through the motions. And that's where, as a coach, you should say instantly, okay, this guy's the wrong coach for this position. Right. This guy's the wrong coordinator for this position. And that's something that I think Tomlin has struggled with. And I think that if you give Tomlin the right guys, and I think that when you saw him when he had, Bruce Arenas, he had, who was the guy Ben had for a few years? Crap. Blanking on the name.
Haley?
Yeah, Haley. You look at those guys, I know that, obviously with Dick LeBeau and stuff like that, I think you saw it that year with Brian Flores when he was the assistant. And I know some people have said, well, why wasn't he made the defensive coordinator? Remember, he was hired real late before the season started. I think it was only because remember, he had that lawsuit.
Issues was going on in Miami,
which I still think that's going on. I'm not sure. Okay. But, and he was a guy who was either going to go off and be a defensive coordinator right away somewhere or a head coach. And I think they're already talking about him right now being a head coach again. So it was going to be tough to put him right in there.
Let me ask you this, Garrett. Now, I'm just going to kind of go off of something you were saying. You kind of dipped into the offensive line there for a minute. And just this current group of guys, the guys that we had, and don't get me wrong, I like him. I think the center's strong. He was a nice pick for us. I like the way that the guard was able to step up and take over the position. Of course, Ciamalo is aging. Who knows how much longer he's going to stick around. Fatanu, I think, looks nice over on the right side to tackle. And then, of course, Broderick Jones, you mentioned him. Now, this group of guys, as you said, you do pay a lot of attention to the offensive line. Your dad was there. What do you see from this group of guys as they are starting to gel? Obviously, it's a lot better than it was at the beginning of the season. There was a lot of holes, a lot of issues in that O-line. But once the guys are able to play with each other again, we're heading into week 14 now. What are you seeing from this offensive line? Is it encouraging to you what you were seeing? Because, again, there's still work to be done. No two ways about it. But there has been improvement along the way. Is this where you want this line to be at this point? Where do you expect this line to be? And how much of this line do you expect to be together moving forward? Again, Broderick Jones has always been a lot of questions. He's improved vastly. But what do you see from this offensive line?
I think that, again, it goes back to what I was saying. You look at, they brought in Arthur Smith as the offensive coordinator. Now, he has had a lot of success as either a head coach, offensive coordinator, with a big, powerful running back. And basing I still believe in football, you're going to have your most consistent success, whether you're a defensive team, unless you've got a guy like Patrick Mahomes and receivers who are insane, stuff like that. You're going to have your most continued success with a strong running game. And, I do believe, and I think most people believe, your team should be built around your offense and defensive line, regardless of how everybody else is, because those are the two things that you can count on is the offensive line. You can't protect the ball. You can't protect the quarterback. You can't throw the ball. You can't open holes. You can't run the ball. You can't stop the run. All that stuff. So anyways, but they went into this year and let Najee Harris go. And regardless, I know he snapped his Achilles or I don't know I know he got hurt, but why bring a guy who primarily results in a power run game, have him there, and then you get rid of that guy and everything, all his blocking schemes, all his protection, everything is going to be based on the defense defending that power run game.
Right.
So you have this offensive line who last 2 years, at least, I know that some of the guys are new, but McCormick and Farinau, or I'm sorry, I know I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong. Those guys had, Najee Harris last year. So I'm sure they were primarily said, power run, power,
Right.
Do all that kind of stuff. And now all of a sudden they have Jalen. And look, I like Jalen Warren, but to me, Jalen Warren is not the same body type, but the Chris Famatu Malafalo situation.
Yes, right.
Where he will come out and all of a sudden he'll have some game where he has 3 touchdowns on 150 yards, and you think, man, this guy should be the starter. And then he has 6 games where he has either 8 carries and gets hurt,
Right.
or has 5 carries for 15 yards or something like that. He and not that he's not consistent, not that he doesn't run hard. He's got the burst, but he's a small guy. He's not a guy that's going to tote the rock 30 times a game. And I think that when you have as any offensive lineman, whatever level you've played at, grade school, high school, football, college, whatever, if you have a running back who can do damage and is going to carry that ball, you mentally go into that game saying, we're going to power run. And that's an attitude that you have on offensive line. And there's my dog, by the way. So that's a little
You're fine.
Cameo there. But, I think that was the failure there when I talked about coaches and that synergy with the players. And the other thing, too, and this is, I know for a fact what my dad would say watching this offensive line. First off, there's a lot of talent there. But
there is.
You watch them, there's very little pulling. There's very little trapping. There's very little differential. One of the biggest things, I think it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago, Dan Moore was our left tackle. And that year, I thought he was the worst lineman I've ever seen. And he worked his butt off before last year. I thought last year was very, very good. He worked his butt off, and you saw it. And he was one of the only guys that I would constantly see do chop blocks, do different. He would say, okay, I've got this guy who's, let's say, a speed rusher. He would try to force them to the outside. Your job as a lineman is to give your quarterback 3 to 4 seconds to throw the ball. Anything after that, don't get me wrong, you don't want your quarterback to get hit, and you want to try, obviously, for as long as you can. But if that quarterback doesn't get rid of that ball in 3 to 4 seconds, that's on him if he takes a hit.
You're right.
You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, that's your job. And Dan Moore was one of those guys. He said, I'm not the strongest guy. I'm not the fastest guy. I'm not the most agile. And you could say the same thing about my dad. He wasn't those things, but he knew, you go back, funny thing is for Thanksgiving, we watched the 1979 AFC Championship game against the Houston Oilers.
Nice.
One of the first times I've ever watched a full game of my dad's. And we watched as a family, and it was so different seeing the Steelers offense versus the Oilers offense. The Steelers offense was in sync 100%. Even watching them come to the line and go into their set position was like night and day. It was like watching a military versus a bunch of guerrilla warfare. It was, these guys were drilled. And then you watch it, they use all these different kinds of blocking techniques, different kinds of ways they're doing things. And you do not see that with the Steelers at all anymore. They talk all the time about how the defense is basically the same. They're trying to run the same defense that Dom Capers ran in 1994. They don't have the personnel, and they also don't have the coaches for that anymore.
It's just very vanilla, Garrett. Everything just seems very vanilla. There's
but
nothing
offensively, and the funny thing is, even my dad, even when he was sick and not doing well, I remember watching the AFC Championship game we had against New England. It was, I think, was the last one we saw before my dad passed away. It was that year New England won their first Super Bowl.
Okay.
And we remember we were favorites. Brady got hurt in the first half, so Bledsoe came in. My dad watched that game with us. He called almost every single play that the Steelers ran before they ran it, because they were running the same schemes, the same formations, the same everything that he ran when he played. And you know what? It worked. Bettis was our rushing attack up until the last, until we fell in love with the killer bees and I'm not saying that was wrong, but until we ran into that with Ben Roethlisberger, and this is not a knock on Ben, I'm just saying that you can tell we changed our blocking scheme on how we block offensively. And I think that we at somewhere, some coach, whether it's Tomlin did it or the philosophy, and again, that's the coach's right to say, this is how I want to run the team.
Absolutely.
But when you're that dependent on your personnel to run that team, Le'Veon Bell, for whatever you want to say about him, and he was, in my opinion, a great running back. And I really wish he's one of those guys you wish would have spent his entire career here, and you could have seen how his career would have turned out. But he ran different than any running back I've ever seen.
Absolutely.
He was very slow, but then he'd hit it and then gone.
There was this
patience. He was so smooth. You'd be like, how did he just run 40 yards?
Right.
He was standing there a second ago. And, I think that you look at that, they got away from trapping, pulling, zone blocking. And that's something where again, you got to go back to, first off, I don't know who their offensive line coach is, but he's terrible at his job and needs to be fired. They need to bring in better coaches that can either communicate with the guys and not be afraid to say, hey, Broderick Jones, you're 7'8". I know we all have the manly thing where, we want you to knock this guy and pancake him. But teach the guy, hey, listen, you're going to run into a guy who's faster than you. You're going to run into a guy who maybe likes to slant inside instead of looping outside. Teach him how to get in his way, to say, Broderick, your job is to get in his way for 3 to 4 seconds.
Right. And as big as the man is, a big guy coming out of Georgia, to get in somebody's way for 3 to 4 seconds, you think this would be
and I'm telling you, and I'm 6'8", 350 pounds. So I understand his side. And I understand how, and that's the thing. Everybody thinks that's easy. It's not, because you got to play with leverage at no matter what size you are.
Absolutely.
But nobody's pulled him aside and said, you look at those long ass arms you have. Because you'll see Broderick Jones, and I think he's a great run blocker. I think his pass blocking needs work, but I think he's a great run blocker.
Yeah.
You see him say, you got these long ass arms, push this guy to the outside. Don't try to pancake him. Don't try to, if Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson or Kenny Pickett runs out to that outside and gets his head taken off, that's on him. Don't get me wrong. You don't want it to happen. I'm not saying you want it to happen, but I'm saying even the offensive linemen, you can tell sometimes, are thinking more than just playing.
Yeah.
And I think, again, with my dad, and my dad would say this, because their offensive line was so regimented, they were thinking, but it was thinking within the game plan. It wasn't, oh God, I got to get to this guy before this happens. It was just make this block and then go to here. But first we're focusing on this block. I remember my dad, when he would talk about plays where I'd have to pull or I'd have to go up to the second level and take the linebacker, he'd say, worry about that first guy in front of you first. And when you watch the offensive line, when they do pull or they do try to do a run blocking play, you can almost see, when you watch the game this Sunday, watch some of those guys, you can almost tell they're not thinking, okay, this is the guy in front of me I need to get first. They're thinking, I need to get to the second level.
Right.
And that's, to me, is where that goes into the coaching. I think you give Tomlin the right, and this is something where there's a general manager for players. There needs to be sometimes a general manager for coaches to say, this guy is not a good fit. I know you're loyal to him, Coach Tomlin, Coach Knoll, Coach Cower, Coach whatever. I know you're loyal to him for whatever reason. He's not the fit for this personnel. He's not the fit. And especially with young players. And I think that's the thing. That's why you see players, especially linemen, leave Pittsburgh and go somewhere else. And all of a sudden they're very much more successful than they were here. You'll see they have a better offensive line coach. You'll see them say they simplified the game. They made things easier, stuff like that. And I think with offensive linemen, more than anything, because it's such a tough job, it really is, when you can get them to enjoy what they're doing, you're going to be much better. And I think that the entire offense doesn't look like they're enjoying what they're doing on any level.
I agree. Let me ask you, before we do switch direction, let me ask you, okay, so you did mention that you were playing football in high school, and you're a big dude. I didn't realize the size. I knew you were a bigger guy.
Yeah.
Is there any times when you were in high school and coaches, the offensive line coach and the offensive coach was trying to get Garrett Webster to do something, and you thought to yourself, you know what? My dad literally told me to do it the opposite way. How do you handle that? I mean,
my dad was always very respectful to whoever was the coach.
Right.
And he was always that guy's your coach. That's the guy you listen to. Now, my dad was also very, and this is something where it's, every once in a while I'll have somebody run up to me and ask me, oh, my son's playing football. And this is what my dad would tell me. He says, if you have a question of what's going on or you don't agree with it, it's your job as a player to ask that coach what that is and have them explain it to you. For whatever reason you're not getting it. It may be a legitimate concern. It may be just it's not clicking in your head. You need to ask that person. It's that coach's job to explain it to you. If he's not doing it, that's on the coach then. And there were times, obviously my dad was there, but my dad was very cognizant that the coach is the coach, you listen to him. Yeah. And my dad also, unfortunately, was not in a position right then where he felt he could come in and give advice. And he was also aware that, he comes in and does this, even the coach is going to be like, I'm having, it's going to reduce the authority from him for the other players and stuff like that. So my dad doing that stuff. I mean, when I played, unfortunately, I really didn't. I came out and played football in Pittsburgh when I was a sophomore in high school.
Okay.
Up until then, I played in Wisconsin, or Sconsin, as it's supposed to be called.
Right.
So I like to always say that I didn't really play real football until I got out here. If I would have started playing football out here when I was 10 or 8 or whatever, like most kids do, I probably would have been a much better player.
Oh,
But I pretty much
absolutely.
relied on just being big and stuff like that. And I was never able to relax and stuff like that. And it wasn't because of who my dad was or anything like that. It was just
Right.
for whatever reason, it didn't click with me.
What were you
But,
weighing in when you were in high school? I mean, obviously you have nice pro size now at this point in our lives, but a
Yeah.
lot of our sizes changed. Where were you in high school? When you
Oh,
were playing
I
football?
was my first year out, I was 6'8", 350.
Okay.
My second year, I was 6'8". Oh, obviously 6'8". I didn't shrink. Although my dad did think I was too big. He did look into, and obviously he was suffering from brain injury, did have a look into if I could have my shins removed or shortened so I could be the center, because that's
Oh,
what he
wow.
wanted me to play.
Yeah.
And I remember the coach trying to politely tell him that if I played center, I was too big and the quarterback would be hitting me in the back of the head with the ball every time he dropped back to pass. But, that was one thing that he did say. So my dad did have some bias towards that area.
Right.
But, then my second year, I was 6'8", about probably 310. That was the best shape I ever got in.
Okay.
And then unfortunately, my senior year was when my dad passed. So I got up to about 370 or so. That was a tough time, but I was always holding the bills on me. So
Let me ask you now. I'm seeing things on the board, and as I said, I'm just trying to catch anything before. I think the most important question I've seen before we do switch topic is it was asked on the board. What is your
who's
dog's?
this guy?
Well, no, absolutely not. I'm sure everybody recognizes you. But what is your dog's name? I see an interest as your dog made the scene there.
That's Beaudry. Pretty much, if you go to any of my social medias, my posts are either comic book stuff, dogs, mainly dogs, and Steelers stuff. So
Nice.
I have 3 dogs. Beaudry, who just turned 4. My girl Bailey, who's going to be 14 in February if she makes it. She's napping right now. She's reached the retirement age where her only concerns are snacks, naps, and every once in a while going out and playing in the snow.
That's every one of our dreams, Garrett.
She's reached that age. Yeah, dogs have the perfect retirement plan. Just do that, and that's all she's got. She can get as fat as she wants to get now. So,
and even cats, they have the responsibility of using the restroom themselves.
Cats do what they want regardless. Cats. I don't know if you allow swearing, but cats do not give a fuck. They do not care.
They don't. They run this world,
I've seen
man.
videos of house cats fucking with alligators. They do not care. I would not. I deliver pizza, and I'll tell you what. You go to a house. First off, the best part of my dad won 4 Super Bowls and all that kind of stuff. That's great. I get to meet a new dog probably every single shift. So to me, I'm
awesome,
coming out ahead a little
You're
bit.
winning, yes.
But I'll tell you what, it's the little dogs you got to be scared of. Those are the ones that'll get you. Okay.
Right.
You give me a big Great Dane, he'll come up and jump on you and give you kisses. A pit bull, that's you don't know how many 80 or 90-year-old grandmas in Pittsburgh who weigh probably 80 pounds have a 120-pound pit bull that they dress up in booties and a knit sweater, and they're their baby. So I mean, you don't got to worry about the big dogs. That's all I'll say.
Garrett, we are going to switch into the glory years, but for a second, let me grab Field of Steel right here, real quick before we do switch over. Field of Steel says, what is Garrett's game plan to beat the Ratbirds? Of course, last week we looked. It looked like there was very little life, even very interest left in this team. Garrett, I thought Chicago was winnable. I thought again Buffalo is Buffalo, but they certainly looked beatable last week. What's the game plan? What do we have to do to come out and win this game against Baltimore on Sunday? And beyond that, is there even a chance, or did we basically see what we've seen and this is going to be what it is? From what I saw,
I think. Listen, yeah. I would love the Steelers to win the Super Bowl.
Absolutely.
But right now with this team, and I think that unless you're lying to yourself, the best thing this team can do right now is lose out and tear it down and restart.
I agree.
The entirety of this team, we gave TJ Watt that big contract. Now, again, this is not my comment. I think TJ Watt has been a great player. I think he's going to be a Hall of Famer when his career is over with. I think he's one of the best players. But my dad would say this because he said this about Derek Thomas, about Lawrence Taylor. Those pass rushing linebackers, they are the final piece you give yourself to a Super Bowl team.
Yes.
They're not a guy you add, whether it's a rookie or not. They're not a guy. It's why is Myles Garrett, and I think TJ Watt is better than Myles Garrett because I think he plays a more premium position, can do more things and stuff like that. But you put those guys on there, they're not going to win you games. They might get a sack every once in a while. They have 4 sacks in the game.
Right.
But it doesn't matter. You can have 4 sacks. If that quarterback completes 1 or 2 passes, they're fine. If you have a great cornerback like a Deion Sanders, a Rod Woodson, a Mel Blount, you can shut down an entire side of a field. You have a Troy Polamalu, the entire team has to game plan differently around him.
Absolutely.
A pass rushing outside linebacker, you can do 50 different things to neutralize them from the games. And again, that's not a thing on TJ Watt. My dad would have said the same thing about Lawrence Taylor, who he thought was one of the great, although my dad did think Jack Ham was better, did think, was one of the greatest players of all time.
As you said, it's more like a cherry on the top of
and it's like I said, when we were talking about this team and how it was built, it's built like it was only 2 or 3 players away from winning a Super Bowl.
Right.
And I think part of that is, this, I think as a fan and as a fan, I think it's a good thing to kind of delude yourself to a certain extent. We weren't terrible going into this year. I don't think anybody saw the defense playing as bad as they have been. And that's the thing, I've seen a lot of posts where people are criticizing Art Rooney II for doing it. He spent more money on the defense than anybody else spent. You can say what you want to about George Pickens. I don't think George Pickens would have put up these numbers in Pittsburgh. You put him, regardless of what you want to say about Dak Prescott, he's a better quarterback than anything we've got here or had here. If we had a Dak Prescott here, he'd probably put up a certain, somewhat similar numbers. But same thing with DK Metcalf. And I think he has been good this year, but I think that you put him, he's a receiver that if you put as he's the only receiver, not just the main receiver, but the only real receiver.
Yeah. Until yesterday, they bring in Adam Thielen, who again, he's a little bit over.
Listen, I will say this. I do think there's something with Roman Wilson. I like him. I think he's a tough little bastard. And I think he's one of those guys. I think he hurt a lot from missing last year. And I think he's really hurting from, if he would have had the Aaron Rodgers from 10 years ago, I think that with working short routes and running good routes, and I know Aaron Rodgers said something about guys. I don't know who would be those guys that are missing those routes. Right. But, and it also might just be one of those things where a quarterback says something to deflect attention and stuff like that. I think that's right. Ben do a lot when the offense was having bad times and stuff like that. Or maybe he's just trying to motivate younger guys, but I think that, and again, that's where I talk about having the right coaches, having the right types of players in the position to help these younger guys. Because you can tell by how our roster's put together, it looks like half a team that's building for the future and half a team that thinks they're winning the Super Bowl this year.
Right.
And I think that the defense, nobody saw aging this quickly and playing this bad. And then I primarily put on some age, yes, but also the coaches, the defensive coordinator. I think our scheme has needed to refresh since that Super Bowl loss to Green Bay. I don't think this coaching staff and Tomlin have ever recovered from that game.
Yeah.
I think that we've struggled since then. I'm not saying they should have fired Tomlin then. I'm saying that it seems like we've been confused about what kind of team we are since then. It looks like we've struggled with holding leads since then and how our defense is put together since then. And I think that we need to get out of this 3-4 zone blitz. This is what Bob Crapers and Dick LeBeau ran. I think that that's hurt us, and I think that's why you see Cam struggling so much right now. I mean, he's been nowhere this year. I mean, he's, and I think he's a great player. I think, again, just like TJ Watt, I think he's a Hall of Famer. I think he has earned every penny he's gotten, every accolade he's gotten, but he has been terrible this year. And I think that if he's a guy that if he was put on a 4-3 line with a defensive end and, I think Harmon is a stud. I think he's really good. I think that he's really good. I think Patrick Queen would be very good if he was put in the right position. I don't think he's meant to play the position he's playing and doing the things he's meant to be doing. He's doing right now. He should be a different position than that, or at least different responsibilities. Because you do see flashes with him of being a damn good linebacker. And you see him struggle. He's the guy specifically when I said earlier that you see guys running to a position and turning around. He's the number one example of that.
You're right.
He's a guy that they should be saying, you're the middle linebacker, cover the middle of the field, do whatever you want. And I think that he would be a lot better. And I think with Minkah Fitzpatrick, I think Minkah Fitzpatrick best years were when they saying, Minkah, do whatever you want, just cover this corner of the field. And then at the end of the last year or two with Minkah Fitzpatrick, I think you saw them saying, no, we want you to stay right here. We want you to cover it. And that's where you wouldn't hear his name called for 5 or 6 games, and I think that that's what you're seeing right now with this team.
On the board, Yinzer Joe asks, Garrett, Adam Thielen is 6'2", 200 pounds. Is this the wide receiver the Steelers really could have used earlier in the season? Does he move some coverage off of DK? In other words, this addition with Adam Thielen yesterday, does this benefit, or how much does this benefit our offense moving forward with these last 5 games?
Well, first off, you got to know how good is he going to be with the playbook and all that kind of stuff,
right.
and how are they going to use him. I think the thing that we've been missing since Hines Ward retired is that tough possession receiver that goes over the middle. That if you go look back and you look at Antonio Brown when he was at his peak and he was here, he was a freaking. I mean, he was a hard worker. I mean, every good thing. It's like every bad thing you can say about him now was every good thing you could say about him back then. And he could do that stuff on his own. But you look at his best years, in my opinion, and you look at when Plexico was here and we had that kind of group with Santonio Holmes and Antoine Randall, they got loose so much because you had Antonio Brown did kind of the Hines Ward role of going over the middle, doing these tough yardage and stuff like that. When we don't have that, our offense struggles. And I think any offense struggles. And I think that's a kind of a dying breed in today's NFL is that tough over the middle wide receiver.
Absolutely.
And now I'm not as familiar with his game as they say, as I am with some of the other wide receivers. That might not be his specialty, but if he can do that stuff, and I think Metcalf can get more open. But I think at the same time too, it all comes down to if Arthur Smith's entire game plan is based around power running and you're asking a coach to all of a sudden change how he's doing things. And I think with Aaron Rodgers, I think they did try to go to more of a West Coast. And I think at times it's really worked.
I do too.
I really like how they've used Dwayne Washington this year. I think him emerging as a real player, I think is great. I especially as the years go forward.
Are you surprised that it took as long to get him involved as it did? I mean, he's been sitting around a couple years. The thing about somebody like Washington, he's not somebody that's easily overlooked. You know what I'm saying? You see this guy.
I think the thing is with him is you look. I think too much of today's NFL is about we have to have a player at every position that can score a touchdown, that can break the field and stuff like that. And that's not how the game is played. It's like the idea that you have to have the number one overall best quarterback in the world on your team to be competitive.
Right.
And that's a joke. If you go back and you look at every Super Bowl, very rarely is the best quarterback in the league in the Super Bowl.
Right.
Generally, you have one who's in the top 5 or 10, and then you have one who's probably in the bottom 15. But his team is based, even with Ben, even with Terry Bradshaw, was Terry Bradshaw the best quarterback in the league during his, when we were winning 4 Super Bowls? Was Roethlisberger the best quarterback in the league during his time? No. You got to have, like I said, you got to have that offensive line. You got to have a philosophy as an offense. I think more than anything, and that's the one thing my dad would say, you got to have a philosophy that you stick to on both sides of the ball, on offense and defense. And you need to say, now you got to be able to adjust. When my dad played in Kansas City with Marty Schottenheimer, and he would say this about Bill Cowher too, because remember, Bill Cowher, Marty Schottenheimer, they're from the same coaching tree. He would say that their problems would be, and I think if you go back and you look at Cowher's career, you can say this, they could not adjust. When things didn't go their way, he would come out and he would say, we're a power running team that's going to blitz and get after the quarterback. How many AFC championship games did we lose because we suddenly couldn't run the ball?
Exactly.
And we couldn't blitz. We ran into a good offensive line or a good defensive line. And they just went they just completely even though they were a better team, that was what would happen. You go back and you watch the Super Bowl 30 against the Cowboys. I remember watching that game with my dad. And I remember there was a period, I think it was the second or third quarter. It's been so long since I've watched that game, where they start power running with Bam Morris. And they're crushing him.
Yes, of course.
But you could tell, and even though I said Cowher was power running him, every once in a while they would do this thing where they were like, we're going to outsmart the other team by throwing the ball.
Right.
And that's what they did. They said, we're going to outsmart them by throwing it with Neil O'Donnell, and that's what they did. And you saw them when they started running the ball with Bam Morris, that's how they got back into that game. And then they abandoned it again. And how many of those games with Cowher did you see that? Now, and you can say one thing about Tomlin. I will say this, and I've always said this. This is the first year where you can't say it. But other years, you could always say in the second half, usually the Steelers played better than they did in the first half.
Yeah.
And I think that's been something that's been missing this year.
And people might argue too as well. I mean, that's a great point. The Steelers do seem to play better in the second half. And even all the way through Kenny Pickett years, I mean, he was getting his fourth quarter comebacks and things like this. What's the problem with the first quarter and the second quarter? I think a lot of Yinzers might ask, because again, very little success in the first quarter. I think we scored more than 7 points in the first quarter in 60 some games.
Because this is the reason. as when you play on a team, whoever's played on a team at any level, whether you only played high school basketball or grade school soccer,
Right.
when you go to a game and you don't have that confidence that you can go down and score,
right,
you play differently. And there's something about when you start playing, you get punched in the mouth a couple times, good or bad. You suddenly say, oh, you get in the rhythm of the game and things. And that's what I think you usually see with the Steelers during this 60 game where you're saying, well, the first quarters, they've been terrible. You go back and you watch those games, you can see how tentative they are when the game starts on offense and defense. And then all of a sudden you see usually around the end of the first quarter, into the second quarter, where they've got a couple possessions and they've got stuff like that. They're all of a sudden, oh, okay, now we can do it. Usually they make a run somewhere in the second quarter where they start looking good. And then, the game happens. They get an interception, a fumble, whatever. Somebody drops a pass. That's part of the game.
But let me ask you this. A lot of teams, they have their first, I think they even mentioned on the game the other night, their first 10, 15, 20 plays scripted basically heading into a game. And you can see where a team is more successful in that first drive of game because they basically know bang, bang, bang. This is what we're going to do. And they practice and they come out and they execute. Why does a lot of teams have that early success and we just don't? We just don't.
Well, because most of those teams that do that, and you actually hear about that and they talk about how successful it is, it's because they have CJ Stroud, they have Jalen Hurts, they have Jordan Love or Dak Prescott. They have, and that's not just the quarterback, they have some overriding offensive philosophy that they're building around.
Right.
We have not had that. And even with Ben, the last couple of years with Ben, nobody likes to talk about it. Ben couldn't throw the ball past 50 yards
rough.
His last year. He was Peyton Manning's last year. And I think Ben's a great quarterback, but I'm just saying there was struggling there with him. And I think we have not gotten since, I don't know, let's see, Ben probably, what was the year he snapped his arm? Was it 2020? Where, that was the last year where we were really, I would say, legitimate Super Bowl favorites.
Yeah.
Where he tore his ligament in his arm. Since that time, we have not had an offensive philosophy. Wow. And I think if you go back and you look before that, the philosophy was, whether you want to say Ben was going to pull some bullshit and, scramble around for 15 minutes and then find somebody open, or we had Le'Veon Bell, or we had Willie Parker, or we had, 15 different guys. We had a philosophy. At the end of the day, football is a simple game. It's still, certain things may have changed, but it's still the same game as it was 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Right.
You have your best players and you game plan around them and you put them in a position to win. If you go back and you look at the Chuck Noll teams from 1974 are much different than the Chuck Noll teams that won the 2 Super Bowls at the end. Absolutely. The Cowher team that won the Super Bowl is much different than the Cowher team in 1992. Great coaches make adjustments through their things. And I know what everybody's sitting there saying, well, why doesn't Tomlin make the adjustments? Who exactly is he going to build it around? It's easy to say, well, game plan around Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is not the Aaron Rodgers of 10 years ago.
No, you're right.
And I said it it's the same thing with Russell Wilson. You saw when we signed Russell Wilson, or when Russell Wilson, the season started, it was, he's great. It's not the same Russell Wilson.
Yeah, you're right.
I think that when you've seen these little bursts of success with us, I think there was times, for example, I still think to this day, if we would have kept Justin Fields, I think we would have done much better last year than we would have. Yeah. Because with Justin Fields, it was, this is what we're doing. He's great at running. He can occasionally hit the big pass and stuff like that. That's what the game plan is. And everybody knew it. With Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson, there's a part of you, even though he's not the same guy, you're still going to, whether it's because he has the mental capability of knowing your whole playbook, you're still going to say, we can do more because we have this guy at quarterback, or we're going to do more because even if he can't do the same things or can't do what you think he's going to do, at least you have a philosophy. And you look at us right now, we're the same as every other team in the league that struggles. The Cleveland Browns, a lot of those other teams, Chicago before, having what's his name? You watch Philadelphia or even Cincinnati, they say, we've got Joe Burrow, we're going to come out and fling the ball around. That entire team knows that. That's part of what you got to do. No team can come out. You're not going to sneak things around. Guys watch enough tape, coaches watch enough things to know who's on the field and what's going around.
Absolutely.
A great team does that, and the other team shouldn't be able to stop it. Your only job is to get 3 to 4 yards every 3 or 4 plays. That's it. It's not to score a touchdown every play. And if you can't game plan around those, or you either can't game plan or you don't have the players to do that, you're not going to be successful.
Let's switch directions a little bit here. I'm gonna a great insight. Thank you so much for all that. And again, a lot going on, guys. We're gonna keep Mike for about, or I'm sorry, Garrett for about 10 more minutes. So let me get into some of the glory years, some of the insight that you might be able to give to us that really nobody is able to give us. Garrett, I'm going to get into some questions about these Super Steelers. I'm going to give you some questions about Dad. I do want to. And one question that I did mention that I seen along the way. Somebody says, "Have you met Chuck Noll?" And I think that was. I'm pretty sure you've had some kind of a small relationship with Coach Noll, correct? Because your dad was so
Yeah,
involved.
the thing is, when Dad left the Steelers, obviously we weren't around here very much.
Right.
Even though my dad kind of came back here and lived for a while. The first time I really remember meeting Chuck Noll was at my dad's Hall of Fame induction.
Yeah.
And then also I remember meeting him on the day of my dad's funeral.
Okay.
And he was there. He pulled me aside and talked to me for a few minutes and stuff like that. And he was, the funny thing is, my dad would always talk about Chuck Noll and my mom. And I think that any player, regardless in retrospect how much you love or hate your head coach, it's funny because you always have the same things. You always know better than your head coach. You always knew the plays better than your coaches.
Right.
And my mom would always say that Dad loved Chuck Noll, but he would always talk about, oh, well, we don't do this enough. Or, we'd run the, we were watching that game in the 79. My mom would say that, Dad would come home and complain, oh, we ran the same play 8 times in a row. It doesn't matter that it,
right,
got 4 or 5 yards or whatever. That's how it, and I think that's just a player thing. But my dad would always talk about Chuck Noll and how he conducted himself. And I think that Chuck Noll was one of those guys that he was the perfect matchup with team, coach, and player. And I think that you saw teams, like I said, I watched that game and you watch how the Steelers handle themselves on both sides of the ball. You watch them come to the line in unison, get set in unison, fire off the ball in unison. You didn't see other teams do that as well. You saw every guy who was on the field look like they were a real NFL player. You go watch Houston, there's 3 guys who look like they either sell used cars on the weekends or, are smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, stuff like that. And I think that Steelers team, and I think this is why they're so revered, those things led out to what the type of players you see today. Right. It all flows from that Steeler team.
Absolutely. And you know what? And I'm going to say, when you talk to the Steelers, you talk about the badasses from the 70s. Yes, the Steel Curtain is a big name, but you know what? There's no name tougher and no name badder than Mike Webster. Iron Mike, Garrett. Again, everybody, you love this group of guys no matter what. You love Mean Joe, you love Terry, you love Franco, you love Mike Webster. So let me ask you this: even like nowadays, here we are, 2025. Do you still have relationships with any of the players, any families, even like yourself, a child of one of the players? Is there anybody that you keep in touch with semi-regularly just to be like, hey, man, what's going on? Anything like that going on these days?
No, I mean, most of the, we see them, since, kind of Art Rooney has taken over, he's really made more of an effort to bring former players around more, have alumni days and stuff like that. I think when, this isn't me making a comment on Dan Rooney or anything like that. When Dan Reed's in charge, the only game I was ever invited to was the 75th anniversary game with the team. And I didn't really see anybody or anything like that. It was just kind of a thing. But since Art Rooney II's been in charge, he's made it a much more of a thing to bring the guys. And that's primarily what I'll run into to my dad's former teammates. And,
now, you really got to enjoy things like that. And the thing is, like, as fans, they would love things like that. But as a player, again, you kind of been there, you've done that. It's just something that your dad did. I mean, does it still excite you in a way that it would excite a Steeler fan just in general? When you hear, there's going to be something down at the stadium Mr. Rooney put together. Garrett, you, your mom, your sisters, Yinzer, welcome down. Does that, does that give you the excitement that it would give an average Steeler fan, or you're just
it's absolutely. I mean, the thing is my dad didn't talk a lot about his playing in his career. He was not I'm going to talk about this game I played in or something.
Right.
I remember the specific times when I was younger where he would hint at it, or he would he was always very shy when it came to talking about himself, and stuff like that. And, that's, I think, one of the reasons why I try to talk about him so much is because I feel like it's kind of a way for me to communicate with him, and whether it be stuff I've learned from other players or stuff that, when at the time, maybe I didn't recognize as my dad talking about his career and stuff like that, because I was younger and stuff, that now I recognize that's what he was talking about. You know, and I think that when I get invited or I get to go, there is a little bit of nerves with going to those things because, you know, I think there's a little bit of an awkwardness with our family and some of those players, because I think a lot of the players, when I speak players, I mean the guys my dad played with,
Right.
I think we're hurt with how dad's situation ended up. And I think that there's probably situations where some guys probably had bad feelings about my dad,
Right.
thinking that, you know, I was talking to you before, you know, we went on air about how with my dad, because he, you know, we went to play in Kansas City and then kind of stayed away for a while. And also he was very private. A lot of guys didn't know what was going on with him.
Right.
And I think that they took when dad wouldn't show up for certain things, maybe, or wasn't as forthcoming, or they heard about the difficulties he was having financially. They probably thought it was, you know, dad, you know, I remember a lot of the rumors for a long time was that dad had a drug problem or dad was faking it or something like that, because they
Right.
remembered this guy from when he played being so different from what they were hearing about him. And dad wasn't, and obviously that was the generation back then, you know, it
Right.
wasn't just dad, you know, that was the generation of human beings, and especially men, you know, back then was don't talk about your stuff and
Right.
stuff like that, whether it's legitimate or not. And I think that a lot of those guys took that personally, that, well, Mike didn't reach out to us, you know, was I not as close to him as I thought I was, or did he not see me as a teammate or a brother in arms or whatever you want to call it, you know. And I think there was a lot of hurt feelings there, and I wasn't close enough to my dad or around enough to know if there was things that went down with some of the former teammates my dad had. But you know, everything now when I see them, so there is personally, because it's a difference when you can go to one of those things, and especially the first time you go to those things, your dad's there to introduce you to those
Right.
people. And obviously my dad, you know, the only real team events I can remember him going to was the 75th, or I'm sorry, not the 75th, the Hall of Fame induction. And that was really it. I know he attended a couple other things, whether it be roasts or some autograph shows and stuff like that. But, you know, I always like to say, I didn't realize how big of a deal my dad was or how beloved he was until he passed away. You know,
Really?
and it was news coverage all the time, and,
Right.
you know, everybody talking about him and stuff like that. And, you know, that was the first time I realized, because to me growing up, you know, especially back then, you couldn't go on YouTube and watch any NFL game forever, you know, or you couldn't, you know, buy a highlight tape to see, you know, anything like that.
Nothing
And plus with my dad not talking about much and stuff like that, you know, I didn't really understand that my dad was a big deal, you know. And another thing too is, you know, I've always used this quote, and it was one of Reggie White's, I believe Reggie White's kids, who said, you know, to us, he's not Reggie White, he's just dad.
Yeah.
And that's how we looked at him. So there was no, oh, dad's a big deal, you know, or something like that. And
Right.
also growing up in Wisconsin, stuff like that, we knew who Mean Joe Green was. We knew who Terry Bradshaw was, but he wasn't that figure. You know, to my mom, he was, and to my older sister, he was, and to my older brother,
Right.
maybe to a certain extent. But to me, it was just, oh, because I grew up primarily a Chiefs fan, because
Okay.
that's what I remembered my dad
Yeah,
playing
right.
for. And I remember Marty Schottenheimer, and I remember all those happy memories when we were there. So, you know, going to these things now, even obviously I'm much more comfortable with it now than I was before, is, you know, it's really exciting, because number one, I usually get to learn something about my dad that I didn't know before. You know, which is always, obviously, I think any of us always enjoy learning about our parents or someone that we loved and stuff like that. And also, I think too, there's a certain aspect where I can give certain guys an understanding that if my dad, because every once in a while I'll see somebody new that I maybe haven't seen in a while, you know, I'll let them know that what happened with my dad, or maybe the way he treated them, whether good or bad, wasn't what he meant, you know, or he wasn't,
Right.
you know, like I always like to say, you know, with what my dad's went through with his head injury, it's like dealing with someone with a drug problem. There's times where you see that vision of the old person they used to be, but it's like they have this secret that they're hiding. And on one hand, you know, you're relieved when you find out, but you're also angry at them for having that and hiding it, not coming out and telling you and getting the help they needed.
You're right. All right. You know, I'm not going to keep you too much longer, Gary. I mean, everything has been fantastic. I'm just going to get a couple more questions in here about Dad.
Sure.
Again, it's just all amazing stuff. I could listen to you talk about your father all day long. I really can. A couple things here. How special is it for you? We talked a little bit about this before we did go on the air, about for you and your family when Steelers season does come around. Again, this is something that you're always going to be synonymous with. No matter what, as soon as you mention your name to anybody in Western Pennsylvania, of course, a lot of people already know who you are. It's always going to be special and synonymous with the Steelers and Mike Webster. How special is it for you, your sisters, your brother, your mom, just collectively? when football season does come around, even years now after the Steel Curtain era, the Super Bowl 70s Super Bowl teams, 2025, is it still a thing for you and the family? Do you make a point to get together to watch games, or has people just kind of moved on and said, this is what my dad did?
I think the thing is that it's like, if you grew up and your father was or mother was a police officer or a nurse,
Right.
or you see something maybe on TV or something downtown that is honoring nurses, or you have a grandfather or something who served in the military, and you see like a Veterans Day or something like that. There is an amount of pride, and there is let's gather together and stuff like that, and really. And we treat it like that. To me, it's like when I see the Steelers play, it's like watching, your dad's place of business, do their work, do something like that. And there's this thing of pride. And especially when, every once in a while you'll hear one of the announcers say, oh, that was, they'll talk about Zach Frazier, and they'll say, well, that's Mike Webster doing things. Or, we'll see guys with their, sleeves rolled up, during the wintertime, and they'll say, well, that Mark Webster started that and stuff like that. That's really awesome and really fun. And that gives us that feeling because, and this isn't me saying some like everybody feel bad for me, but it reminds us of those times when things were good for us as a family. And before things went bad and things kind of went downhill, and I think that all of us, one of the biggest reasons why football is so popular is, obviously our and we're not going to get into politics stuff yet, but obviously our country is very divided, and,
absolutely,
we see people ruin relationships or lose relationships for whether it's stupid or justified reasons or whatever. Football is kind of that thing that we can all say, well, let's get together, let's put aside whatever we got and watch this thing. I've seen two guys at the bar who hate each other will sit around and watch a Steeler game, and cheer each other and high five each other. They hate each other completely and would gladly, punch each other in the face 2 seconds later. And I think that football is one, and plus, it's 16, 17 games. It's not 162 or something like that. It's something people can set aside, and it's like, we don't take pride in our towns or our governor or mayor or whatever anymore, but we take pride in our team. We take pride in our logos and our uniforms and stuff like that. And I think that to me is the allure of football. It's everybody makes the case that, oh, everybody watches football because it's violent. I think the violence has very little, if anything, to do with it. It's the storyline. It's the city versus city. It's like the Browns. I remember those years when the Browns weren't in the league. There was something that just, it's still, don't get me wrong. It's great to play the Ravens and great to beat the Ravens.
Right. Like but at that time,
but when we didn't have the Browns, it was kind of like, man, where's our little brother we get to pick on, And it's like I say, when you make fun of the Browns, it's, and I think, whether it's because our towns are so close, I think Cleveland understands that's part of the deal. It's and at some point in time, maybe they'll beat us and be good. I mean,
they just love
over tomorrow too, but
they just love having that connection with the Steelers. When they beat us, it's like winning the Super Bowl to them. So I mean, we're bigger than
to them than we know. They beat us in the playoffs and they let that quarterback go a year later. That's all you need to know about the Browns.
You've only need. It's wild, Garrett, because they did not finish with a better record than the Steelers since 1987 or 89 or something until just recently. And again, you had a quarterback that was able to finally beat the Steelers and beat us convincingly, and they let him go. That's
at our place. And they said, and he goes off and is one of the best quarterbacks in the league.
I agree.
Meanwhile, they're stuck with Shredder Sanders.
I agree. One more question for you, and this is a big one. So just recently, just last week it was, Cam Hayward did pass your dad in the all-time games played by a Steeler. Of course, Ben, he has the most. Your dad was number 2, and then Cam number 3. He just passed your dad just recently. Now, and I pretty much know the answer. It's going to come out. It's going to be respectful and everything like this. But at the end of the day, you know what? That was your dad's record. And again, even before Ben got to where he was, it was Iron Mike. Is there any part of you that kind of feels a certain way, or are you totally cool with it? And you know what? Good for Cam. It's fine. It's going to be broken eventually. Where do you fall? What side of the fence do you fall on when it comes to that? Just because I know this is recent.
Well, I mean, the one weird thing is that you really, because since Dad was a lineman, there's not really a lot of records for linemen.
Right.
We track everything nowadays. In sports. It's like, you look at baseball, they track hard hit ball percentage and what part of the field. And, in football, it's like you watch some of these asinine stats. Well, this guy from 5 yards is accurate. Well, what NFL quarterback can't be accurate from 5 yards?
Right.
But, for linemen, there's not really. My guess is, and obviously nobody has this. I'm sure Dad has the most played, like consecutive plays played without missing, or I don't know what it, because I'm not saying that's in third record, but I'm saying, there is a little bit of that just because, again, it's always cool to see, Dad mention and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think that, I know Ben, when he broke the actual games record, he was absolutely wonderful with, I think he said a couple things in the press conference about it afterwards.
Okay.
I thought Hines Ward broke another one of Dad's records for something with longevity and stuff like that. It's an honor. Obviously, those guys who are breaking those records, they're not guys who are just, I remember, and this, my dad thought Jackie Slater was a great player, but I remember when he broke the years played, and he wasn't even playing. He played maybe a series a game for like 3 or 4 years, and he would say, good for him for getting a paycheck, but he's like, you're not really passing anything. It's like, when Cal Ripken broke the all-time. Cal Ripken was playing and was a contributing player for those. It's not like he was just sitting there and doing nothing. And I think that was, I think the thing though my dad was most proud of was snapping for punts and field goals and everything. That's when I made the mention about the plays played, that I know that would be the one thing my dad would probably be most proud of if there was a record for how many times my dad did it in a row or something like that.
Yeah. Because
that's what he would always, when we'd always joke, and my dad had a great sense of humor. And that's why, if anybody sees my tweets, usually there's some kind of joke or dig at my dad, because that's how my dad was. He would say something, along those lines and stuff. But, I think that, and I mean, with Cam, even though, like I said, I don't think he's having a very good year. I don't like how he handled things right before the season started.
I agree.
And I think not a lot of people are in disagreement with that. I think that he's the kind of guy, though, you would want to break one of your records, and I think that's what my dad would say. I think my dad would think it was great. I think my dad would also say, just give me one game paycheck and we'll call it even there.
Right.
But I think that, Cam's the kind of guy, he's handled himself with class and honor his whole time here. He's been a good player, and stuff. But I also think too, is that nobody's, and this isn't a knock on Cam Hayward, I don't think anybody's going to say, oh, Iron Mike isn't as tough as he was, or even that Iron Mike isn't still the quote unquote tough, that Steeler. It's like Jack Lambert. We've had other linebackers who have got more sacks, more tackles, stuff like that. But he's that guy that you think of.
The guys on that 17 team, Garrett, there never is going to be anything that takes anything away from them. I'm going to be honest.
Well, the other cool thing is that there's certain things you think in sports. You think of Jack Lambert's toothless grin.
Yes,
you think of Troy Polamalu's hair flying around, and you think of Iron Mike's arms.
Absolutely.
And I think that's, as his son, that's really cool to have something like that you can say that's something people are going to remember, and that means the most to me is every once in a while I'll get these texts from people or messages on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, where somebody will talk about, not just my dad, being nice and meeting them at a grocery store in 1978, but they'll talk about how they were going through a rough time and they thought about Iron Mike, and they'll talk about some little thing, dad snapping for punts and field goals, or dad playing in the weather with no sleeves. And they'll say how got him through a rough time. And I think that's something that I'm glad that my dad has, and that's something that I wish if my dad would have been healthier and would still be alive, he could get that message and understand that. I think that's something that means more to me than anything else.
Guys on the board, terrible board, 5 minutes. I'm going to give 5 minutes. Throw anything up they have on the board for Garrett, I'm sorry. Anything in the next 5 minutes will get asked and answered. If you have anything of any questions, anything about the Steelers, anything about Iron Mike, do throw it up on the terrible board now. We will certainly address it. Mike, it's how many times in my life have I said Mike Webster? It's going to keep coming out as Mike. I guarantee it. Garrett. But no, everything has been so insightful, so exciting today. Now, who in your family, you mentioned, your brothers, sisters, your mom, who's the biggest Steeler fan? Who's the one that always says, you know what, guys, let's get together. The Steelers are coming on.
Oh, I'm the sports guy. I'm it doesn't matter what it is. I'm one of the ones. And the other thing too is especially, at the end of the day, my sisters are dad's little girls. So there's always going to be that little bit of difficulty watching some of this stuff,
right.
with, and not in like they blame football for anything, just, remembering them and stuff like that. I always try to push them past that and try to show them, even when we had our bitterest feelings towards the NFL and towards the Steelers,
Right.
I always looked at it as, you're rooting basically for my dad's coworkers. You're rooting for them to do well, to get paid well and stuff like that. And for the team to do well. Cause that's who my dad played for. That was, what he, at the end of the day, we can talk all we want about money and all this other kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, you put on that shirt and that's what you represent, and to me, it's like I said, it's like the police, it's you put on that uniform or you put on the uniform of the military or for your country, that's what you root for,
All right, let's get to the terrible board. A couple questions popped up right away. Tyrone, always great seeing you on the terrible board, my friend. He says, Garrett, do you think that the Steelers can beat the Ravens this week?
I think in a rivalry game, anything can happen. I do not have a good feeling about this game. Like I said before, I think the worst case scenario for this year is that we either win out and get into the playoffs and then get demolished in another first round, or we win out and lose 5 to 10 draft picks, from what we were. Sometimes, one of the things with Chuck Noll, and I think this is something my dad always said that never got mentioned, is his last 2 or 3 years, he could have retired 2 or 3 years earlier and let somebody else take over. But he said, and remember Dad even said that was a point that he made to some of the guys on the team that he trusted, is that if he can stay for a couple years, they weren't very good, but they got high draft picks and he can leave the team in a better position than when he got there. And I think that, one of the reasons my dad left or retired in 88 is because he knew Dermontti Dawson was there and he was ready to take over that center position. And I think that my dad had that philosophy. And I think that some point in time, there's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, we need to just suck, basically.
You're right. And that's kind of where we're at.
You look at basically how much of, we're struggling now, but you look at those 2000 to late 2010 teams, how many of those teams were built off of bad or down years and good draft picks? Troy Polamalu, Ben, Santonio Holmes, Plexico Burris, those guys were all high draft picks because we had bad years. Sometimes that's what you need to do. Now you need to hit on those picks and get those guys that are worth it, but you need to go out, and it doesn't always need to be a quarterback either. That can be other guys.
As you mentioned, like a Troy Polamalu who could just.
I mean, Le'Veon Bell was a
Bell.
4th rounder. There's guys that don't need to be a number 1 draft pick to be really good quarterbacks.
All right, let's go to the next question. Yinzer Joe says this: Garrett, who was your dad's biggest hero, and what did he fear most? What did he fear most, and who was his biggest hero, if you do know?
Biggest hero was John Wayne.
Okay.
He loved the Duke. We still, to this day, if it's his birthday or it's Father's Day, we watch a John Wayne movie.
Nice. All right.
I still can't turn off a John Wayne movie if it's on TV. I have a little statue of John Wayne that even when my dad played,
see in the background, is that
that's one of the that's one of them. That's not the one, but even guys who used to play with Dad, you were talking. If I go to one of the things and I see some of the guys, they'll joke with me about Dad watching, staying up till 4 a.m. watching a John Wayne movie while everybody was sleeping during training camp or something. And or if a John, I remember even when my dad didn't live with us, when things, I'd still call him and tell him, this was before you could watch any movie you wanted in 3 seconds on your phone, or, if McClintock was on, or El Dorado. Even my earliest memory with my dad is watching El Dorado with him. Nice. And still probably one of my favorite ones.
And I think what better role model for somebody like Iron Mike than John Wayne? I mean, come on.
Yeah. So the Duke was his guy. And then he would always tell me that his biggest fear was failure. It was not doing the job that he was supposed to do.
Right.
That was the thing that scared him the most, and letting people down. He did not. That's the thing that he didn't like the most. Is that's the kind of stuff. And then also probably an angry woman. Probably scared the hell out of him too.
They scare us all, Garrett.
Exactly, and you should be.
One more here. Let's see. I did see something that I liked. Let me scroll a moment here. Let's go with this one right here. Last question for Garrett on the terrible board. Tyrone asked, Garrett, do you think Aaron Rodgers will get his shit together? You know what? There's actually two that Tortilla put one up prior to that. So let me ask you real quick, Garrett, how do you feel about Zach Frazier? And then second question to wrap it up will be, Garrett, do you think that Aaron Rodgers will get his shit together, or is it going to be a lot of what we've seen so far up to this point, and this year's pretty much going to shit itself out?
For Zach Frazier, I think he's great. I think he's his star. I think that obviously I'm biased, but I think the center position is the most position on that line, depending on how your line is set up, because he's the guy that should be reading out the blitzes, calling out blocking assignments, stuff like that. And he's the guy, obviously, who's closest to the quarterback. He's going to be that first guy that lets your play get off. And I do think he's having a little bit of a step back this year, but I think that's something you usually see with linemen in their second year. I think usually that second year, they usually do struggle a little bit. And I think he's also struggling a little bit with how, like I talked about earlier, with how the offense is set up. It should be a power running game offense.
Right.
And I think that, last year they were more based around that than they are this year. And I think that he's, not that he's been bad this year, but I think that that's where you've seen maybe some times with him struggling a little bit, not having those things. And I think that's not something you can totally put on him. So I think he's a stud. I think he's a guy that's going to be here hopefully for a long time.
And real quick, before you do switch over to Aaron Rodgers, I want to squeeze one more offensive line question in for you. I agree with you 100%. I think that he is a stud. But let me ask you, of this offensive line that we have right now, we mentioned all the guys. We mentioned McCormick, we mentioned Frazier, Fatanu, Siamalu, and Broderick Jones. Is there anybody? Let's take Siamalu out of there because he might not be around. He's getting older. These other four guys that they're starting to build the interior offensive line with. Any of those four guys you say just aren't going to be it moving forward as far as building this offensive line that you want to have here for the next 5, 6, 7, 10 years? Any one of those four guys not the guy that you see right off the top?
I think with any of them, I would say it's still too, other than Frazier, I don't think any of them you can sit there and say, okay, this is 100% the guys. Right. Now, all of them have the potential to be that way.
Absolutely.
I think to me, Broderick Jones is the biggest question mark. And I really, if there's any player that I've really been rooting for the last few years, it's been Broderick Jones. I think his rookie year, he was great in a tough situation where he was switched to right tackle. I thought he was our best run blocker. And I think if you go back and you watch those games, obviously you don't want to because there was nothing special about him, but he was when he came in and they ran behind him, it was a different team than when we wouldn't run behind him or we do anything like that. I think he's also, and I know that people think it's an easy switching from right tackle to left tackle and back to right tackle and back.
Absolutely.
I think that struggles. And I think at the start of the year, I think that he really struggled with his confidence. And I again, like I said, I think this entire offensive line needs a good offensive line coach. I think he needs one of those offensive line coach that has driving the same truck that he's driven for 15 years, chews tobacco, and speaks in 7-letter words. I think that's what they need. And I think that they don't have that right now. If Tomlin comes back and personally, I think that at this point in time, I think you got to say it's probably at the point where it needs to be just totally redone.
Yeah.
But if he would, and I'm not saying, I don't think you get rid of him unless you know the guy you're bringing in. And that's been my thing the last few years. I think you could have fired him any point or let him go anytime over the last few years. But who was the guy you were going to bring in to replace him? And I don't think there was a guy. And I don't know if now, again, I didn't know who Mike Tomlin was before they hired him. So there might be that guy out there.
Right.
But, I'm saying I do think that Tomlin, to me, it's like you looked at what he said in the press conference after the game where they were chanting "Fire Mike Tomlin."
Yeah.
You see other coaches would come out and blame the fans and say,
"Oh,
they're arrogant asses" and stuff. It's something where I remember, I think it was last year they were booing him, and he said, the fans have the right to boo. We want our fans fat and happy and stuff like that.
Right.
And I think he understands that, and I think that's a very tough thing to find with a coach. And I think I think that him and most of the people who are important in the Steelers understand that the only reason these guys are booing is because they want the team to do well.
Absolutely.
And that goes into what I was saying with you asked about Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
You bring in a guy like that, and this isn't a knock on Aaron Rodgers. I think that you bring in a guy like that, he's not going to understand that culture. He's right. The reason because he's not getting paid $50 million to come, like he was when he got traded to the Jets. He didn't stick around because he wanted a new contract. He wanted to compete, and I don't think you can say at any level that this team is 1 or 2 years I think the problem, like we talked about the last couple of years, is we talked ourselves into being 1 or 2 players away from being a legitimate Super Bowl team. We're not that. And I think that with Aaron Rodgers, I don't see I get everybody's excitement about Will Howard because he won a national championship, and you're always going to be a little excited about that guy.
Right.
But he's a 6th-round draft pick. Okay. Yeah, I know. Throw him out there, and I agree. If at the end of the season we're mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, sure, throw him out there for a half.
Right.
But at the end of the day, we don't. It's not like you can just take him and say, oh, "Okay, we're throwing Mason Rudolph in and seeing what's going to happen." If he wants to keep playing great, I think that's a testament to his professionalism and his character to keep going out there and playing, especially if we do get eliminated or there's no chance. But I do think you look at him, and I think you see this with a lot of the offensive players when they're out there. They don't have any belief that they can score. They don't have any belief in
it sure doesn't look like they do.
They can win that game, know. And I think that which reminds me of I remember the Super Bowl against Dallas when the guy dropped the touchdown in the end zone for the Cowboys. I forget his name right now.
Yes.
And I remember the guy we were watching. I remember one of my biggest memories with that. We were watching the highlights of the game, and somebody said, "Well, if he catches that," because it was like one of those specials where they do the greatest what ifs.
Right. Yeah.
And they said, "Well, if he catches that ball, the Cowboys win that game." And the commentator was adamant that if they catch that ball, they win that game. And my dad said, "That's fucking bullshit. He catches that ball, we'll just go down and score the next play." Because he had it wasn't just bravado. It was they had the belief that they could go down there and score every play.
Jackie Smith, maybe was his name.
Yeah, Jackie Smith. I think.
Smith, yeah.
And I think that you look at this team, and I think it's the first. I think you've seen it the last few years, but really this year, you watch that team. They don't have any belief they can do anything.
No, it's hard to watch a little.
I mean, you just look at it in their eyes. They're just whether it's the scheme, the coaches, the players. I think it's a combination of all of them. And I think with Rodgers too, you look at him and he's going, "What the hell did I come here for?" Again, you came here, you took the check, and I'm no great fan of Aaron Rodgers. Now he's our quarterback, so you got to root for him.
Right.
But at the same time, too, I do feel for him. I mean, but it's not like our players weren't there and he couldn't see it and say, "Okay, this is what I'm. There's going to be a better chance here." But it's like, when we signed Aaron Rodgers at the start of the year, I said, you're getting an older, slower version of Russell Wilson.
Yeah, right.
He's not a guy. And I think the thing is, you talk about DK Metcalf not being as productive as people maybe would have wanted to be. He can only it seems like Aaron Rodgers only wants to throw the ball 5 or 10 yards. And that's fine if you've got the receivers for that. You've got the team built to do that. We don't have the team built to do that.
We don't.
To dink and dunk over the middle and run the ball. So, I mean, for him, and look at him. I mean, he's getting the hell kicked out of him every week.
Yeah, you ain't.
Some of that is his own fault for holding on to the ball too long.
Just his face. I mean, come on. I mean, you watched the game the other day like I did. He looks exhausted, man.
I mean, there's times where you see him and you watch and you see what an NFL quarterback is supposed to be.
Right.
You see, again, I didn't watch too many Packers games. I'll still never forgive him for beating us in that Super Bowl.
Yeah, I agree.
But you see, but I was aware of him. I did see, you see some of that there, but it's not it's like seeing Ben Roethlisberger at the end of his career. Right. It's not able to do the things he used to do, right. And I think that even if you had prime Aaron Rodgers with this team, I don't think they'd be necessarily any better of a position. I think that it's a very weird situation because I think the talent is there to be better than we are right now.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that's where it comes back on Tomlin. I think it's where it comes back to the coaching staff and stuff like that. And that's where in the offseason, that's the biggest thing that needs to be addressed is what internal changes can we make of things. You can't just say we're not going to hold a team next year.
You're right.
What, regardless whether Tomlin's back or not, what are we bringing in that's going to change this? Because you can't just flush the entire team. You can't release everybody, because it puts you in salary cap hell and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
You got to sit there and say, okay, what guys need to go? And it can't be a Brian Canada situation where you get a guy and you say, oh, well, let's keep him for 2 or 3 years, even though he clearly is not good at what he's doing.
Right. Well, everybody, Garrett Webster, I just start off by saying we thank you so much, my man, for stopping by. It was fantastic. It was wonderful hearing all the insight and all the stories and just everything about your dad and everything just the way that you see it as a son of a former Pittsburgh Steeler. Garrett, we do thank you so much, my man. You were welcome on the show anytime. I would love to hear many, many more of your stories, if possible, brother. Anything, man, before you take off, any other last words you want, any Pittsburgh Steeler, anything to cheer us, to get us in a good mood, keep our head in the season, anything before we go, Garrett? What do you got, brother?
Sell the team, Bob.
Sell the team, Bob. You know what? That might have been the best.
I love these people who are talking them into themselves. I don't think anybody's talking, but some people actually believe that we're going to make a run at Kyle Schwarber. And
yeah,
makes
It's
it makes me sick. I know this is a Steelers, all this other kind of stuff. And listen, Steelers fans, you guys are amazing. I can't tell you how much it means to me. Even when some younger guys, I remember one time I was down the South Side. I met this young kid, and he, I thought he was a gangbanger or something like that. And my dad was always taught me to be nice to everybody and stuff like that. But comes up to me one time, I thought he was going to offer to, talk, tell me to get out of there, something like that. He saw I was wearing my dad's jersey. I think it was a game day or something. He said, "That's a Mike Webster jersey. My dad told me about him and stuff." Young, old Steelers fans are the best, and
yeah.
they've been great. They've looked after us, whether it be financially or with just kind words. So I can't, any Steelers fans that see that, I was trying to say it, you guys are the absolute best and meant so much to it. Any struggle we've had as a family, you guys have been there for us. So, I want to say that you guys are just the best, and we think the world of all of you.
I'm sure they feel the same way about you guys, Garrett. Thank Garrett Webster, everybody. Thank you so much, my friend. Again, it took me a couple years to be able to actually grab you and get you on, but we did it. I'm happy. I'm excited. And you know what? I think everybody on the board is as well. Garrett Webster, everybody. Thank you so much. You know what I think it is? It's that damn Garrett Wilson up in New York, and I'm mixing those two names because, of course,
yeah, it happens. One's a short black receiver. I'm a 6'8" balding white guy.
Easily
Same
confused.
thing.
Easily.
Same thing. I get it all the time.
Garrett, I thank you so much, my friend. Again, always awesome getting the opportunity to talk with you. And again, we hope to see you in the future.
Yeah.
Garrett Webster, everybody, give it up.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, guys.
My man, good luck with everything in the future. Hopefully the Steelers could keep it together for us, at least for another 5 weeks, maybe, as we said, sneak into the playoffs. And but from there, we will go on. We got the big draft coming here in April, another big off season. So we're going to figure out what the hell it is we got to do to turn this ship around. But Garrett Webster, everybody, thank you so much, Garrett, my man. I look forward to talking to you in the future. You have a great day, sir. And again, thank you so much.
You too. Thanks, guys.
All right, Garrett. Take care, brother. All right, that was Garrett Wilson, everybody. Great to have Garrett on today. Let's get into it. We got a lot of stuff to actually get into. If we do, I have CBS Pick'em's results to get into. Also, we're going to get into a lot of what was being said by the players and coaches and a lot of back and forth quarterbacks, all this kind of drama going on. We're going to get into that today. And also the new additions to the team that we made yesterday. Guys, a lot of stuff to get into. That was amazing. It was a lot of fun having Mr. Garrett Webster on today, being able to talk to him. I'm glad that you guys enjoyed him and you had a lot of questions for him. I hope he got some answers out for you. So stick around, people. We do have a lot to get in today before this show's wrapped up. So do stick around, guys. I don't want to wait any longer just because I usually do this at the halfway point. But I do have the CBS Pick'ems. Let's get this out of the way, guys, because we have a lot of Steeler talk to go for the duration here, and I don't want to miss out on any of it. So let's get to these results from the CBS Pick'ems, guys. And I do want to say great job. Mostly everybody kicked ass this week, but it played out like this. As far as the week itself went, Cody, you are the big winner. You are the big winner this week, Cody. Take your bow because you did win 12 games in this past week, week 13 in the NFL. Corey and Fearless Steel pulling in at number 2 with 11 wins on the week. RB, myself, Mike, and Yinzer Joe, we all had 10. Derpy, Finch, Tyrone, Somber, they all had 9 correct. Vegas, Richard had 8. Patricia 5. Jamal, he forgot to get his picks in, but you know what? That's all right. He could bounce back and get them in this week, guys. So that was the way it went down last week. The winner of the CBS Pick'ems was, in fact, Cody. Cody, congratulations, my man, in winning week 13 in the CBS Pick'ems. And this is what our results overall look like after 13 weeks. RB at the very top with 133 total games picked correct this season. Vegas coming in second with 130. Corey in third with 126. Me and Richard tied in fourth with 125. Derpy 124. Cody 122. Finch 121. Mike 119. Phil 114. And then the guys that were kind of they came in a little later, so you can't really put their score against them. because they are fighting, and it is this: Jamal with 52, Tyrone 45, Yinzer Joe 39, Somber 35, and then Patricia after 2 weeks up to 12. So guys, you're looking good as well. I do want to say congratulations to Cody one more time, guys. Don't forget to get them pick'ems in, as tomorrow the week 14 is starting already, so we have a little bit more than a day to make sure we get those picks in. Before that, you don't want to miss out on any games, because again, one game could throw you off. But I do want to say to everybody, thank you for being great with our guest today, Garrett Webster. It was great to have like I said, I did try to get him a few years back, and I don't remember what fell through. But again, I thought it was a pretty good idea to have him on, talk a little bit about the Steelers, the Super Steelers, get some inside scoop. So one more time, I do want to say thank you to Garrett Webster, my man. Thank you for coming on the show, guys. Lots and lots and lots of things to get into today. We're going to be talking about this Pittsburgh Steelers team. We're going to get into some of the drama that's been going on here in Pittsburgh, and also some of the moves made. Guys, we pick up another 35-year-old white receiver. He was a Pro Bowler, 2-time Pro Bowler years ago. We have some undersized receivers. So this is what your wide receiver room looks like right now, minus DK Metcalf. Scotty Miller out with an injured finger. Ben Skoranek. Adam Thielen, who we just picked up yesterday. Roman Wilson. Calvin Austin III. This is where we're at. This is what it's going to be. Again, what else can we do? We have MVS sitting, waiting patiently, which I do know that Juan Valdez-Scantling is available. If anybody wants to pluck him, from our waivers, they can. MVS is available to be plucked. But as I did say, the Steelers did bring in Adam Thielen yesterday. He was a good receiver. Again, he's 35 years old at this point. I don't know. You're putting a team together. I don't know if I'm starting with, or if you're trying to improve. I don't know if it's the white ends than the white receivers. But again, that's just me. I look for the most talented person. You want to put yourself in the best position to win. This is just kind of a disaster what's going on with this football team. They did bring in Thielen yesterday. They did release Slay yesterday as well. He is gone. Darius Slay is no longer a part of this football team. Asante Samuel did get bumped up to the regular roster. And as I said, Valdez-Scantling, he is available to be plucked, but apparently nobody wants to pluck him. He's sitting there, and he probably will continue to sit there. I don't know. Again, we went over top and we grabbed somebody else, another 35-year-old receiver. Also on top of that, Aaron Rodgers, guys. Aaron Rodgers turned 42 yesterday. So we, by letting go 33-year-old Slay, bringing in 35-year-old Thielen, and by Aaron Rodgers having a birthday yesterday, the average of this age, the age of this team has gone up since the last time we talked. Come on, we missed one day because of some kind of Xfinity power shit, and we come back and the team has aged drastically in a day. So this is where we're at, guys. A lot of things that we're going to talk about. Is this turning into a circus yet? Is it a circus for you? Is it a circus for Yinzers yet? It's starting to feel that way. Again, so much to talk about, guys. Tyrone says, Ryan, I like Adam for real. He'd be a good fit. Adam T. Holy shit, we're okay. Okay. Again, in his day, he was good. But I just don't know what the hell it is that we're doing and what we gain by this. And we spoke of him early. And why do we have to be at this point to basically bring in another wide receiver? Why does it have to be? It couldn't have been the last 2 years when they started hunting with Brandon Ayuk prior to last season. And then the Debos. And then, and here's the thing. Everybody's like, well, you don't want this guy because of that. You don't want that guy because of it. Well, you know what? I want somebody. Everybody has baggage. Everybody has something about him you don't like. At this point, and then this is what they deal with. So again, I just don't know if this is to appease us, to keep us happy, or they really have something in the works to try to become an improved football team and make a move. I don't know. It's hard to say. But again, one thing we do know is Adam Thielen is joining the team. Darius Slay is gone. Asante Samuel has been elevated. And Valdez-Scantling is available to be plucked from the waivers. Couple other things for some former players. Beanie Bishop Beanie Bishop, we all remember this guy. I like this guy, as a matter of fact. He signed with the Saints practice squad. And then also Mark Robinson, who left and came back. Well, he just recently, as of yesterday, got signed with the Cleveland Browns practice squad. So just in case we're wondering about any of those particular players, they are signing elsewhere. Beanie Bishop again with the Saints, the practice squad, and then Mark Robinson, he went to the Patriots, I think, and then came back, and now he again is signing with the Browns practice squad. Guys, let's get into some of the juicy stuff. Why don't we? It's been a good day. Of course, we had Garrett Webster. Let's get into some of the juicy talk that I think a lot of people was waiting to talk about and see what was going on. Let me get back in my mindset in the game. Let me get my head in the game, if you will, and I will start nailing more messages on the terrible board, I promise. But I do want to get into some of these things that's happened over the past couple of days, simply because you can't ignore it. And these are going to be things that the Steelers have to overcome if they are in fact going to anywhere come close to bringing this thing together this year. I don't know if it's possible. Again, 6-6 this year. This time last year we were sitting at 9-3. Keep that in mind. We were 9-3 at this point last year, so put that into consideration as well. This is. Let me get to. I'm going to start with Debo, just because I think what he said was interesting. And you don't really hear this stuff until after the fact. So again, I'm going to start with James Harrison, if I can pull it up right here. This is what James Harrison said about Coach Tomlin. Of course, he played here. He won a Super Bowl with Coach Tomlin. Yada, yada, yada. This is what is being said about the coach from the mouth of James Harrison. He says this, quote, "I have never been a person that thought Coach Tomlin was a great coach. I thought he was a good coach. I'll be honest, part of that is because when I was slated to be the starter, when Joey Porter left, he drafted 1 and 2 outside linebackers." He goes on to say, right now, we have the coaches on the staff. When I say coaches, I'm saying this as a coach is someone that tells you what to do, and it doesn't matter if what they're telling you is right or wrong. A good coach gets you to play to your potential. And right now, the players we have on the team, I have seen them play. They're not playing up to their potential. This is, of course, is what James Harrison said. He goes on to continue to say, a great coach gets you ready to play beyond your potential. Something has to be done. I know the Steelers historically don't move on from coaches, but I think it's time that history be made. This by Debo. Guys, again, James Harrison, his comments on Mike Tomlin. A bit of a surprise to see that again. Tomlin being blasted by Debo, saying, I never thought Mike Tomlin was a great coach. Let's move on. After the chants went down on Sunday at the Steeler game, guys, booing, renegade. I didn't think this was possible. And then going on to chant, fire Mike Tomlin. Jack Sawyer. I can't think what the guy was. Rowdy Tellez. He pulled a Rowdy Tellez. And basically what went down was we were booing Bednar here in Pittsburgh during the Fire season. Bednar, our finisher, our closer. And when we booed him, this Rowdy Tellez, who was on the team for roughly about 2 months at the time, he says, "We don't do that here. Don't boo. You can't come out here and boo these players." Well, Jack Sawyer, he pulls a Rowdy Tellez. Also, this is what our rookie, Jack Sawyer out of Ohio State, our linebacker, says after the fire Tomlin chants on Sunday. I'm sorry, not Rowdy. Jack Sawyer says this. Let's see. Yeah, you're frustrated because that's bullshit when people were saying that, but we're not playing up to our standard. We need to take ownership as part and go out there and play better. He says it's bullshit that we are expressing ourselves, which again, kid, I'm pretty sure you were still in diapers when his team was winning playoff games last. Come on. Be booing your ass out of Pittsburgh next. So anyway, the rookie, the kid from Ohio State, thinks it's bullshit that again we let they no we want to listen. We want to continue to have bad product. Please, by all means, give us the rotten food, McDonald. Give us the shit that was sitting in the basket for 45 extra minutes that nobody wants. That you usually throw away. Give us that. Of course, we're going to talk about it. Of course, we're dissatisfied. Of course. So again, yes, he's trying to do the right thing and do the right thing for his teammates. But at the end of the day, Shut the fuck up, Rowdy Tellez. Nobody cares what the hell you got to say. For 2, you're going to be gone, and we're still going to be Steeler fans one day. And you know what? Screw you. Again, Jack Sawyer. So that's what Jack says. Now this one here is the juicy. This is the juicy exchange, if you will. This one here is between Patrick Queen, our current inside linebacker, and Trey Essex, a former Super Bowl winning offensive lineman here in Pittsburgh. This it didn't really get out of hand, but it's interesting nonetheless. Let me pull it up. So first, all right, right here. Trey Essex says this about Patrick Queen. He says in his tweet on Sunday, he's hurt, but I'm over the Patrick Queen experiment. Simply put, he's not a Steeler linebacker. He's not Ferrier. He's not Timmons. He's not Shazier. He doesn't play with that disposition. We missed on that signing. And for our main rival to leave him alone should have been a sign. This is, guys, Patrick Queen's response. Patrick Queen says this. Never was a Pro Bowler, talking about Trey Essex, of course. Never was a Pro Bowler or All-Pro, but get on here yapping. Got carried your whole career back and forth from the bench. Shut the fuck up. STFU is what he says. Patrick Queen, 2 former Super Bowl winning champion Trey Essex. I'll say it one more time. Quote, never was a Pro Bowler or a All-Pro, but get on here yapping. Got carried your whole career back and forth from the bench. Shut the fuck up. So somebody goes on and responds, this guy AGB on Twitter, he says, if you were as good at football as you are at responding to tweets, you may be having all-pro season yourself. Instead, you can't tackle to save your life. This is what this response on Twitter says to Patrick Queen. And Patrick Queen replies in this manner. He says, oh, right, because only fans are allowed to tweet. Got it. Haven't missed a tackle in 3 games, and it's part of the game. Your favorite players of all time missed them too. So again, guys, is this the circus atmosphere that we all feared? Once we first brought in Aaron Rodgers, we thought we might have a circus, and you know what? A circus isn't just one guy. A circus is a collective of a bunch of people and elephants and everything else in the room. Is this the circus that I was expecting at the beginning of the year? One more thing here. This is what Aaron Rodgers, of course, on his birthday yesterday, he invites teammates over to his house to watch film and tape. He says this about Jonnu Smith. Aaron Rodgers on building connection with his receivers. When there's film sessions, everybody shows up. When I check to a route, you do the right route. Jonnu and I were on the same page. I checked to his in-breaker, and he ran an outbreaker. Jonnu is a true professional, so I'm sure he's sick about that. Again, he did make comments about, just the wrong routes and patterns not being made last week. So again, has it turned into the circus that we thought it was going to yet, or is it still working its way there? It's not looking great. It's not looking great, guys. Let me see if I do have one more. I have one more here. This was said yesterday at his press conference. Mike Tomlin was asked about being booed at the game yesterday or on Sunday. This was what was written about that. Mike Tomlin says, I generally, when it was asked about being booed, he says, in general, I agree with them. I agree with the fans. This is what he says. From this perspective, football is our game. We're in the sports entertainment business. And so if you root for the Steelers, entertaining them is winning. And so when you're winning, when you're not winning, it's not entertaining. He goes on to say, and if you've been in this business, you understand that. And so I respect it. I share frustrations. I understand what makes this thing go, and winning is what makes this thing go. This was the comments yesterday by Coach Tomlin at his press conference when being asked about being booed on Sunday evening. Again, that was the right words. He said the right words. Whatever comes beyond this, we don't know. Turn things around moving forward. I got to be honest with you. From what I've seen from that offensive, the display of the offense the other night, it was bad. It literally should scare nobody what we're doing on offense. But let me just make a couple more points here on the Coach T. Let me ask you, if let me see where I got it. I have it somewhere around here. Let me ask you this. Mike Tomlin, 18 seasons, 12 playoff appearances, 7 division titles, 8-11 in the playoffs. And everyone's going to say this is a Super Bowl career, right? Hall of Fame career. I'm sorry. 18 seasons, 12 playoff appearances, 7 division titles, and 8-11. Of course, I could get into a lot more details, but for the sake of what I'm going to do, where I'm going to go here, I'm going to leave it at that. Compared to 18 seasons, 12 playoff appearances, 8 division titles, and 11-11 in the playoffs. Mike McCarthy, is he a Hall of Fame coach? You have to ask yourself. Again, a lot of people say, you know what, Tomlin's a shoo-in. Tomlin's not going to have any problem getting a job. Tomlin does this well. Tomlin does that. Guys, I'm going to compare him to Mike McCarthy's record. Mike McCarthy, who is actually from Pittsburgh, and he popped up when we were looking for Mike, when we hired Mike Tomlin last time in conversation, but I think he ended up taking the Green Bay, whatever the position, whatever the job was. So this is the comparison between the two. Mike McCarthy and Mike Tomlin, 18 seasons, 18 seasons, same amount of seasons. 12 playoff appearances, 12 playoff appearances, same amount of playoff appearances. 8 division titles for McCarthy, 7 for Tomlin. 8-11 in the playoffs for Tomlin, 11-11, 3 more wins for McCarthy. Is he a Hall of Famer? I don't think he is. Why is Mike Tomlin so highly regarded? Is what I'm asking. We haven't won a playoff game in 9 years. And again, people say, well, who are you going to hire? Well, apparently, I put out some facts the other day on the show on Monday, and I said this: all these people here, New England, who can you ever get after Bill? Who can you get to fix this New England Patriots team? Oh, Mike Vrabel comes in, turns a team that was 4-13 into a team that's 10-2 right now. 10-2 from 4-13. Jacksonville, Lee and Combe, they were 4-13 last year. He is 8-4 right now. The Jacksonville Jaguars are 8-4. Lee and Combe. Let's continue. Ben Johnson in Chicago. The Bears were 5-12 last year. The Bears right now 9-3. Also, prior to that, Washington, the Commanders, the year prior, Dan Quinn comes and takes this usually crappy franchise to the NFC Championship game. And finally, Jay Payton, who's been around for a while, but yet he goes and turns this Denver Broncos team into the best team in the league. The Denver Broncos, who were mud just 2 years ago. So a new change of scenery can go a long way. And I always say it about the Penguins because they do it as well. Every time the Penguins get a new coach, it seems like they win a Stanley Cup. But guys, that's one of the big issues. Well, whoever are we going to get? Well, just pick one here. Mike Vrabel, Lee and Combe, Ben Johnson, Dan Quinn. Guess what? I'm sure all these people were saying, well, who can we bring in to be a better? There's people out there. Again, it's just a change of scenery, a change of philosophy, a change of personality, a change of culture, a change of a lot of different things that could happen by changing over a coach. And again, guys, I don't know if maybe we're just, we're Steeler fans and this is what we do. And we're going to stick up for our guy as we do. But again, as his performance has really earned him a Hall of Fame career. Has it earned him a ticket to the Hall of Fame? I don't know. And Yinzers, because Tomlin has a winning percentage, it's hard to be consistently mediocre. It's a very, very strange, peculiar career he's had. All in all, when you look at the numbers and everything in the past 2 to 3, 4, 5 years that are record lows, things that we've done worse than anybody's ever done, you got to keep that in consideration as well when you're talking about the early success. Yes, the success was there, and if we have to acknowledge it, we certainly have to acknowledge the back end where it was not so good. So again, I like the guy. He looks exhausted. I actually kind of feel bad for him. His eyes were. Come on, you seen him the other night. But at the end of the day, Is all that? Is he a shoe-in Hall of Famer, or is he a shoe-in Hall of Famer because of his name? Because everyone just always considered him to be one of the greats. Nobody fears our teams anymore. Nobody fears our coaches. Nobody fears, it hasn't been like that for the Pittsburgh Steelers consistently for many, many of years. I'm going to say decades. So again, I like the guy, and again, whatever happens with him, I wish him the best, and I hope wish him well. But it's kind of where we're at right now. Let's take a look at what else we do got, guys. A lot of things going on over the past couple days. Injuries. This is the injuries as of yesterday's press conference. It looks like this. Derek Harmon is out with his knee. He's out. Limited to start the week in practice is Queen with his glute. PQ is out with his glutes. Pierre is still out on concussion protocol. Aaron Rodgers, of course, his wrist. And that is it as far as the injuries go. We could see that change because today is only hump day, and we still have 4 or 5 days, 4 days at least till the Steeler game. But that is the report as of right now. We did talk. We got Adam Thier. Also, what else? I was something else in here that I did want to talk about. Oh, bullshit. I caught something that he said the other day. And I don't listen to him, but I seen it in print. Bullshit right here in Pittsburgh. He says, realistically, 2026, the Steelers quarterback depth could be this: Mason Rudolph, Will Howard, and Drew Allar, the Penn State quarterback. This is what bullshit says. I can't imagine we go after Drew Allar, but come on. Could you imagine if that is our quarterback room next year? Mason Rudolph, Will Howard, and Drew Allar. Just interesting. Sometimes things come out of his mouth. Our defense, guys. Let's start with the offense since we are talking about the offense briefly. The offense has 667 snaps this year. That is the lowest amongst any team in the NFL. Our defense has played 827 snaps, which is 820 snaps, which is the most. No defense has been on the field for more snaps than the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers are 65%. That's not something different. But again, it's just kind of what this season is. I think we could beat Baltimore. I think we could beat Baltimore twice. I think we could beat Baltimore and Cleveland. I think we could beat Baltimore, Cleveland, and Miami. And you know what? Even this particular year, I think we could maybe beat Detroit. But it's not because we're good. It's because everything is so inconsistent. What I seen in that from that offense the other day, guys, very discouraging. You knew it was going to be a 3-yard pass. If it's 3rd and 7, you knew it was going to be a 3-yard pass. If it's 2nd and long, you knew it was going to be a 3-yard pass. There's just nothing about this team that scares anybody. And this is you had all off season with your offensive coordinator putting this amazing offense together. This is the results. Guys. Again, we're gonna try to get our spirits up by the end of the week and get ready for the Ravens. But I got to be honest with you, it's from what I saw, and the Ravens looked like shit last week too. But I got to be honest, what I saw on Sunday was very discouraging. Of course, letting up the 250 yards on the ground, but on the other side of the ball, the offense shows you nothing. Bingo's saying that he's saying that Aaron Rodgers was done with the Jets. Phil says, been like that since Big Ben retired. Jamal, what's up, dude? Always great seeing Jamal. He says A-Rod is done. Bingo, you as well. Always great seeing Bingo on the terrible board. Bingo says Will Howard could be great. And I do apologize if I missed anybody today. I usually, I don't like to do that. But just due to the circumstances, I do want to make sure I say what's up and welcome to the terrible board for the child of the 1970s. I think we've seen you before on the board. Child of the 1970s. He says this: Tallman has only 1 playoff games in 4 of his 18 seasons so far. That's another one. I did see that. Consider that, guys. Tallman has only 1 playoff games in 4 of his 18 seasons. That's almost 20 years. He managed to win playoffs in only 4 of those seasons. Let's continue on. Make sure like I said, I don't want to forget. I don't want to miss anybody. I've seen a few names in here that I didn't recognize, and I apologize. And I don't want to take all day for trying to track them down either, so I'm just going to look here another second. Thank you, guys. I know it was awesome having him on. It was great having Garrett on today. At Jammy 8575. He says Broderick Jones is no left tackle. He's a right tackle. I do want to say welcome to you. Also, I want to say welcome to at Spock. Can you save me? At Spock is a Cowboys fan, actually. He says, bro, I'm a Cowboys fan, and I'm loving GP, and he has been late to a meeting already, but he's too good. Give it time. Wait till the personal foul penalties cost you a couple games. Wait till the games are on the line, and he's still a stupid ass and still doing shit to lose you the game. It's going to get old. Give it time. Believe me, we loved George Pickens at first, too. We loved him. My God. We didn't care what the hell it was wrong with him. But, again, give it time. Wait till he cost you a game in the playoffs. Dallas, who I know is hungry because, of course, they haven't been to an NFC. The only NFC team that hasn't been to an NFC championship since 95. They're hungry. Wait till he F's that up for them. That's all I'm going to say. I'm going to leave it right there. I'm just going to go a little further here. I don't want to miss out on anybody. All right. And then also at M. Marcus, 3970. He did say a lot earlier on, so I do apologize. I didn't get to you as well, my friend. But welcome to the terrible board. Let's move on, guys, as the show is rounding third base today. Tyrone says, just like TJ Watt, Phyllis Steele, I never liked that crybaby biatch. Let me get into a few other things, though, because as I said, it went fast today, guys. We had Garrett on, so I don't want to miss out. Jack Lambert says this about the Steelers. Speaking of Garrett Webster and his dad, Iron Mike, Jack Lambert says this. He tweeted out, the Steelers are in big trouble. Jack Lambert says the Steelers are in big trouble. The Steelers guys have dropped to number 21 in the ESPN polls after the most recent game. They were up at 11 when things were going well a few weeks ago, down to 21 out of 32. Oh, here's one. Oh, how can I forget this? I did mention also, guys, do you want to make sure you get over and get your Pro Bowl votes in, get your Steelers in? We got some people doing pretty well in the Pro Bowl voting, believe it or not. This is the way that the Pro Bowl voting looks right now. Ben Skoranek, he's leading in special teams votes in the AFC, second overall in the league. Ben Skoranek, he's leading the AFC in special teams votes and second overall in the league. TJ Watt, fourth overall, second in the AFC for outside linebacker. Connor Hayward for fullback. Connor Hayward, fifth overall, third in the AFC. That's for fullback. Ramsey, eighth overall for free safety. That's in third overall in the AFC. And finally, Boz, 10th overall and seventh in the AFC as far as kicking goes, guys. So get your votes in for the Steelers, whether you think they deserved it or whether you don't. It's still nice getting our guys in there. Get on and vote. It's looking good so far. I'm seeing Ben Skoranek being the number one guy in the AFC on special teams. That doesn't include kickers and guys like this. But also, guys, there was five Steelers also to initially make the Pro Bowl vote leader list, as of course fluctuates as the votes come in. So, guys, make sure you do get your votes in. Get our guys down there in the flag football game, if you will, this week. Or not this week, this season. Aaron Jade, what's up, brother? Always great seeing Aaron on the board. Aaron says, here we go, Steelers. Lindsay says, people just love to criticize the Steelers. Other teams suck this year too, but never get half the media shit. And that's it too. And that's one thing, we hyper-focus on the Steelers. Lindsay, I couldn't agree. I thought about this the other day. There's a lot of teams playing like shit. I really think, listen though, I really think the kicker is, any way you slice it, the Chiefs are looking bad. They just did great for about 5 years. The Eagles are looking bad. They're not looking like themselves, but they just won a Super Bowl. I guess maybe Buffalo, but I mean, really, when you don't win a playoff game in 9 years, it certainly builds frustration. It certainly builds hyper focus. It certainly, it's gonna take the top. It's gonna be the story until we could win a game in January. This will continue, and it's trending to not happen this year. I'm not going to roll it out, but guys, after what we've seen from this team, they lost 5 of their last 7 games. They're 6-11 in their last 17 games. Their last season's worth played of games. Tyrone, yeah, we haven't won shit in 9 years. I mean, come on, guys, that's a decade. I mean, there's only so many decades it's been played of NFL football in the Super Bowl era. They're completing their 6th decade, and we've just went through 1/6 of that, not being able to win a postseason game. That's, again, I think that's the underlying factor here. This is what's building up in people, guys. And Super Hayward, Tortilla is saying, Super Hayward, who would have thunk it, right? Tortilla also says this: never would have thought Connor Hayward gets in the Pro Bowl and Cam doesn't. Well, if he made the Pro Bowl, he'd be getting the raise as well, Cam. So this is a double whammy against him. Tyrone says Tomlin only 4 season playoff wins. That's just pathetic. And again, yes. Where else is that acceptable? Where else is that acceptable? And if that's acceptable, you have to start calling Mike McCarthy a possible Hall of Famer. You have to. You have to. You literally have to. Has McCarthy had 500 seasons every year? No. But I didn't know that's what makes you a Hall of Famer, is playing 500 ball consistently. That would make me think you're not a Hall of Famer. But again, he's our coach, guys, and I'm gonna be behind him until he's not. And we're gonna try to win football games. And we got Baltimore, and again, this is the biggest game, and I think this is a very winnable game, unless they are able to come out and run all over us the way Buffalo did. That could be a big. I mean, come on, they do have Derrick Henry, who hasn't looked great, but the fact of the matter is, we stacked 5 guys up on that side of the line, and Cook still continued to run through everything. So you're adding the legs of Henry. You got Lamar. I don't know, guys. Winnable, yes. Are we going to win? I don't know. I hope. Rushman 412. I do want to say welcome back to the terrible board. He says, at Tyrone, I got one better for you. Tomlin only had 3 playoff wins since all of Cowher's players retired. He is 3-9 without Cowher's players, excluding Ben. And when you put it that way, I think that's kind of the way you have to put it, Rushman. Because otherwise, it just seems like, people are picking and saying this guy's better. But when you put it this way, once all the players were gone, then you could fairly say, okay, this has nobody's players. It gets worse. It gets worse for him. Again, 3-9. And again, I'm not trying. Listen, I'm not kicking while he's down. I understand. He, he's saying the right things. He looks like he's beaten, battered, and the guy just needs rest. But again, it is what it is. It's football season. Yes, you're tired. So are we. We've been tired for 10 years of not winning a game in January. Yes, we understand as well. Tyrone says, I tried telling Jamal the teams he built ain't done but. What else we got? Tomlin also goes on to say that he will not no, Cower ended out saying this about Tomlin. He said Tomlin won't let the outside noise affect him, which I think that it is affecting him. I'm going to be honest. I haven't seen Tomlin look with the – I mean, come on. He's always got the big, baggy old bug eyes. But them big, old, baggy bug eyes was bigger and buggier and everything last week. The guy looked like he was very stressed or he needed about 18 hours straight sleep. It's hard. It's hard to not let outside noise get to you. It really is. And in my opinion, did you see Coach's face last week? Did you see his face? Again, I wasn't feeling too great about the football team when my coach was looking this way. What else? Also, Stephen A. Smith. Everybody knows Stephen A. He says it's over. He says Mike Tomlin era should have ended. It should end after this colossal failure of a season. Stephen A. Smith says it's over. Tomlin era should end after colossal failure of a season. Ownership comes out and says, we're well aware of the increasingly disgruntled fan base here. Chad Ochocinco. I don't care what Chad Ochocinco says, but, he made a comment about Cam the other day. Remember, Cam had the big, he was going back and forth, John with Allen. Cam, come on, Ochocinco says this. He says to Cam, he says, man, just play ball. Just play ball. And this is somebody who ran his mouth after every play. Again, just going through all the controversial stuff. This is the stuff that you're going to hear. This is stuff you're going to read. We are going to turn the table tomorrow, as tomorrow's picks day. Don't forget that. Also, don't forget to get them CBS picks in by tomorrow night. But we will get into tomorrow also the things that are going to start looking at to try to win Sunday. Because here's the thing, good or not, I'm going to continue to watch this team for another 5 games. And you know what? It's going to be something that I focus on. And again, we're going to try to win every week. So again, we're going to try to figure out what it is we got to do to beat the Ravens. I think they're totally beatable. But again, I thought Chicago was beatable. Again, I thought the Chargers were beatable. Again, I thought the Seahawks were beatable. And they all were beatable. But these are games that we managed to lose. So again, we're going to try to figure that out as the week goes on, guys. Again, here, hump day, only a couple days left this week. Tyrone says classic Tomlin. Tyrone also says Steelers freak. That's embarrassing. Let me move down a little bit, see what I missed. All right, right here. Rushman says this. I have said for 12 years Tomlin was not the guy. I'm not hating. Just so I know it's not even a hate thing anymore, guys. It's just the lack of winning. We want to win. I guess we like him, but what's more important? We're football fans, right? Maybe somebody's going to come along that will love a lot more. Maybe you'll like the next guy, we don't know. Again, look at all these other teams that I mentioned. They were down and out. The Jaguars back in playoff contention. The Commanders in the NFC Championship game last year with a rookie quarterback. I would like to have some of this fun. Also, I'm not hating, just showing facts. He has not developed player schemes or anything. Tomlin is about the same as Barry Switzer. Interesting. Steeler Freak says Alex Smith, Matt Moore, A.J. McCarron were the opposing quarterbacks for those 3 playoff wins. Oh, wow. Look at that. So the 3 playoff wins that Mike Tomlin's team had was against Alex Smith, Matt Moore, and A.J. McCarron. And I'm going to be honest, I don't even remember who Matt Moore is. Rushman said only difference. Jerry Jones fired Switzer faster. Only 4. Yeah, ain't that crazy? Lindsay, I did too. I felt bad. I mean, at the end of the day, he's a person, to see him dealing with the pressure. But at the end of the day, it's your job, dude. You make a lot of money. You make mad money, bro. You make probably more money than most coaches in the league. And yet the things that need to change and improve every year, they're just not. Again, it's nothing against the man at all for me. Tyrone, Steeler Freak, that's so embarrassing. All bums. Lindsay says F. Rooney, too. He has blamed just as much. Absolutely. And Omar Khan. I'm going to get to him in just a minute. And don't get me wrong, I love what Omar has done to this point. But I'm going to remind us maybe why we should be pointing fingers at Omar as well here in just 1 second. Tyrone says this division game, we want smoke. Bingo says we were in the trap game on other teams. Absolutely. We've been the trap game for other teams for a couple seasons now. I agree with that. At Gskin 5750, welcome to the board. Great having you on. He says every team you mentioned, Steelers could have beat if they didn't turn the ball over or have a brain fart in the end zone. I agree. Tyrone, Matt Moore was Miami's quarterback. Oh, okay. I don't remember him. Feels like 9 and 8 tortilla. Kin says Barry Switzer, you can't be serious. Barry Switzer did come in and went off of a team that was already built, though. You got to remember that as well. A pretty damn good team. I hated that particular game, but come on. Rushman also says, I'm going to hit the sub button. I like this place. Makes me feel like I'm back at home again. I appreciate it, man. We're glad to have you, Rushman. Glad to have you, brother. Thank you. And also right here, Inter Joe says the fact that people are panicking and already saying that the season is over when it's not is crazy. They could still possibly win the. They can, they can, but will they? Inter Joe, I couldn't agree with you more because here's the thing: I'm not bailing on this team. I'm just talking, telling it how it is. This is what's going on, and I want everybody that I can possibly reach to be on the same page, so we can continue to follow and love our Steelers. And again, I think that they can particularly do those things. I think they can win the division. I think they can win a playoff game. And again, the teams around the league aren't really setting the league on fire. So these teams that we could face in the first round of the playoffs and the second round, it's not going to be your 16-1 Chiefs. It's not going to be Buffalo who comes in with 15, 14, 13 wins. You're going to get opportunities against the teams in the playoffs now. They're an Indianapolis Colts team that's very, come on, this was the best team in the league and we beat the shit out of them. Yeah, I highly doubt it. But guess what? You're going to get an opportunity to play a team like Indianapolis in the playoffs because they're going to win their division. We're Jacksonville, and you're going to, so again, this be the perfect opportunity. The Steelers are missing out, guys. But as the Steelers continued to throw the 2-yard pass all game, even when they needed 11, even when they needed 14, even when they needed 6, it's just really discouraging because it doesn't even seem like they're trying. And if they're not trying, how can I expect to hope and expect that they're going to win? It just didn't look like they were giving it, guys. I hope that changed. I hope that the rivalry changes the way that we played last week. We need it to, because if it don't, then we just might be done. But guys, the schedule that we have, it's favorable. Even if you split with the Ravens, the Browns are beatable. The Dolphins getting hot, but totally beatable. And again, Detroit isn't what they were, as we've seen just this past week. It's not the same team that they even were last year. They did get knocked out in the first round of the playoffs, by the way. So again, in theory, it's the best possible situation for us. But we're just not holding up our end. That's what's unfortunate. Our quarterback has a cast. He can't get under center. They're saying he's going to take more snaps under center this week. So there's a lot of things going on with this team that unfortunately, we have to talk about too, because they all factor in. And it just be where we be at this point. Let me move on and see what else we have, because we're going to start getting into the trivia of the day. Start wrapping things up here shortly. Again, had a great guest on today, of course, Garrett Webster. Always great to talk to somebody that has the insight that somebody like Garrett has. Let me take a look at my notes just to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Oh, one more, and then we're going to get into the start wrapping things up. Now that Adam Thielen joined the team, and even MVS for that matter, the record for the Steelers is 10 receivers catching a pass in a season. 10 different players, running backs, tight ends, receivers, whoever the case may be. 10. There's never been a season, or there's never been ever, where more than 10 receivers caught a ball for the Steelers. Aaron Rodgers is about to break another record, because if Adam Thielen comes in, and there's even speculation he may play this week. Who knows what he knows as far as, who knows? But he will be the first Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback to complete passes to 11 different quarterbacks in a season. So he's certainly getting his records. He's came here, not really getting much done for us. He's padding his stats a little bit. But again, that was kind of a problem with mine. He was going to pass Ben up on the all-time passing yards, and I kind of didn't like that at first. I thought, well, what, if this guy's going to come in and throw some, get us some touchdowns, I'm all aboard. But he's getting his. He's leaving us with not much to be happy about. We got Baltimore this week, guys. Big game. Of course, always a big rivalry game with the Baltimore Ravens. Let me read a couple more comments, and we are going to start getting ready to wrap things up for the day. I'm going to go right here. Steeler Freak, what's up, dude? Steeler Freak says, when I watch Steeler games, I feel like the dude in the movie Clockwork Orange when his eyelids were forced open so he couldn't close his eyes and was forced to watch the horror movie playing. And like I said, the whole league is kind of like that. Wouldn't it be great if we were able to put ourselves in a position to take advantage of the whole league being just being goofy this year? We're just as goofy as everybody else. Tyrone says, "I think we could." I think we could win the division too. I do, but will we? I don't know. Phil says now with these dumbass coaches, in just a matter of time. When whatever you think about Tomlin, whatever, these offensive coordinators or these coordinators are not surviving. They're not going to survive. It's once the season's done, if not prior to that happening, I think that both of these gentlemen are gone. Well, I think Terrell Austin definitely, but I think Arthur Smith should be right there beside him. I don't know. Again, I don't know. I don't know if they'll can him right away, but I think they both deserve to be gone. That's just my opinion. Because again, he came in with this great offense, this idea. We're going to change everything around. We're going to uproot the way everything is ran in pro football, and we're going to get a million tight ends, and we're going to run the ball, and we're going to hit our tight ends, and we don't even need a wide receiver too. We don't even need that. We're so whatever we are. We'll just hit Jonnu Smith because he's so athletic. Well, guess what? None of that worked. None of that worked. Steeler Freak also says this. He says they could win a Super Bowl, but they won't. That's a good way to put it, man. I think that, again, this kind of year, it's going to be a weirdo team, and we're going to sit there at the end of the season in mid-February and go, damn, if we just did this a little bit, or we're as good as this team, it's going to be somebody like that. You watch. This isn't one of those years that the you know who the Super Bowl winner is going to be all year. If I could just find one more thing here that I want to talk about briefly. Here it is. I found it rather quickly. All right, guys, then we are going to get ready to wrap things up here shortly. I was talking about Omar Khan. How much of this is his fault? Everyone seems to be happy. He's aggressive. He's making moves in the offseason. But just some of these notes, guys, makes me put him in the same category with Arthur Smith and with Terrell Austin and with Mike Tomlin. When you think about it, this is some things that did happen under Omar Khan. Fumbled the Kenny Pickett draft pick. I think, say what you want. It is what it is. Hiring Matt Canada. Letting Brian Flores walk. And then hiring Terrell Austin. Paying DK Metcalf top five wide receiver money. Has he been a top 5 wide receiver in any capacity? The Russell Wilson and Justin Fields debacle. The situation with George Pickens. Does anybody on this planet let him go? Does anybody let him go besides for Omar Khan? He's a problem. Yes, he brings issues. Yes, he costs games by stupidity. But again, you have to consider it. And finally, banking on a 41-year-old quarterback who's now 42 as of yesterday, banking on a 41, 42-year-old quarterback. Guys, is Omar Khan any less guilty than the other parties? Yes, we like his aggressiveness. We like him going after moves. We like him, some of the things he does. But at the end of the day, just through some of these things I read, it says this: the team has operated like a bottom 10 organization since Ben retired. Let's see. Let's get back on the board here, and then we are going to get ready to head into the final stretch, if you will. Tortilla says Adam Thielen believes. Bingo. I wonder if we can free up some cap space by offsetting pay with Social Security checks. Yeah. Game ball on that one. G-Skins 5750 says, come on, Steelers, it's time to get red hot. And who's getting hot? The Bengals are getting hot. The Dolphins are getting hot. Wouldn't it be some shit if them Bengals went on a run? They get into the playoffs and they end up winning. Come on. Tyrone says he's getting 09 vibes. I would love 09 vibes, man. I would love 09 vibes. Phil says, hey, if Lloyd Chris has had a chance with Mary Swanson. Oh, yeah. Lloyd Christmas and Mary Swanson. All righty then. Tortilla, we pay the discount double checks now. Steeler Freak John says this: the Steelers need a 3-year overhaul to include a complete new coaching staff and luck in drafts. They are wasting time and need to start this work this offseason. Everything else will be this same old shit. Bingo says break another record. Who cares? What does it matter if the team, if it's 10 or 20 different receivers, it's only 5 yards? True. G Skin says this. Come on, Steelers, it's time to get hot. Bingo says when's Senior Citizen Day at the Giant Eagle? Troy Klingsmith says this. I do want to say welcome to the board, to the terrible board. He says when the bread goes stale, you got to get a new loaf. Hey. Now there's a Tomlin concept that might work, right? Also, Tortilla says, we just gave you stale bread, $10 million. Tyrone, right? What the fuck is Omar doing with paying him $150 million? Somber, he might be if we had a wide receiver too. But yeah, Somber, also Tyrone, the GP and Slay signing. Steeler Freak says paying no play Slay $12 million then cutting him. Tyrone, my biggest iffy. Bingo, DK isn't even top 10, but in fairness, teams can double him because there's nobody else out on the field to cover. I agree. Guilt by association. Lindsay says they won't. And then Steeler Freak says thinking Ramsey was still a shutdown corner and getting rid of Minka. So again, you guys aren't wrong. Still nailing on a lot of points on that particular conversation. Also, guys, let's do this. Let's get into it. First, I do want to say that don't forget, if you get a chance, go check out our website over www.the2dumyinzers.com. That's www.the2dumyinzers.com. A lot of cool things over there. Mike does a lot of work. He has his dumb thoughts. There is every single episode. I do believe there's a link to every show that was ever had by us, and also the contact information, any questions, anything like that, suggestions, feel free to contact us. Do go check out our website at www.the2dumyinzers.com. Also, we're live 5 days a week right here, Monday through Friday, 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. every day right here on the tube. Guys, it's time to get into the questions of the day. Everybody on the board, everybody at home, put on your thinking cap because here we go. This is how well do you know your enemy? How well do you know your opponent? The Baltimore Ravens, of course, is who the Steelers play on Sunday. So today is going to be no different, guys. This is a Baltimore Ravens question. Here we go. Question of the day. Let's see how we do. Short and sweet. Who was the Ravens' first head coach? Who was the Ravens' first head coach? Take a minute to think that over. I'm going to grab some more messages on the board so we don't leave anybody out. Steeler Freak says, I'm sorry, Tyrone says we're going to get shit in order, win these next two. You know what? Wouldn't it be great if we did? Wouldn't it be great if we just went out and dominated and got a convincing win against Baltimore and looked convincing and looked like things are getting better? And then to want to up it, to do it again next week, to look good again next week. Then fans can start getting back into it again. How often, how bad is this going to get before we actually say, you know what, guys, I just don't think we can do anything. And I'm almost there now. But again, I keep saying, guys, we have 5 weeks of football left. We have 5 weeks. That's a lot of football. So again, if they can do it, things can go our way. If they don't, then they're not. Couple more on the board here before we get back into this trivia. Steeler Freak says, folks assume the Steelers can get wide receivers to sign with them. Why would they? GP explains it all. Somber says, can't make bread if the yeast isn't fermented. I guess you could call me spoiled. Phil says he does not give a fuck. Also, Tortilla says Jerry Jones. Bingo says Art Modell's grandkid. Lindsay says Diddy. Steeler Freak says Peaches. I'm going to give you a hint. I'll give you a hint. We'll see if this we'll see if this changes your thought process. Their first coach was a coach that we beat the previous year in the playoffs. The Steelers beat the Baltimore Ravens head coach, their first head coach, the previous year in the playoffs. Michael Jackson, Tyrone is saying. So again, the guy I'm looking for, the first head coach of the Ravens, he coached on one of the teams we beat in the playoffs just the very year before. See if that helps at all. Also, I want to just throw this one out while we're waiting for some answers. Speculation. Mike Tomlin to Penn State. I kind of wish I had Mike's opinion on that. I know that he got some things going. He's off and on backstage right now because I know he had some other things going on. So I don't know if he even hears me. But Mike Tomlin being Penn State's new head coach. What do you guys think about that? Could be interesting. Again, I would love to hear Penn State's fans' perspective on that. But first, what we're going to do, John Hardballs is the tortilla. Tortilla saying John Hardballs is the answer. Guys, again, the question of the day, who was the Baltimore Ravens' original first head coach? This would have been in 1996. And in 1995, we beat that coach in the playoffs. And in the playoffs that year, we had a bye. We beat the Buffalo Bills. We beat the Indianapolis Colts. And then we went on to lose to the Dallas Cowboys. That helps you any. Just give you another second here. Somber says that's just something Ben said. Is that a rumor now? Probably. I seen it flying around. I just grabbed it and I wanted to make sure I at least mentioned it. Steeler Freak says Big Ben threw out the Penn State game. Okay, is that what that's from? Because it's certainly making its way around, which I think, listen, I'm fine with it. I'm just kind of curious on what the Penn State people would think of this. All right, guys, question of the day. Who was the Ravens' first head coach? The clue was he was a coach on a team that we beat the prior year to him becoming the first coach of the Ravens in 96. Guys, again, Marv Levy was the coach for the Buffalo Bills. We beat them. We lost to the Cowboys, so it's not their coach. So it would have to be Indianapolis coach, who we did beat 20-16 in a game, quarterbacked by Jim Harbaugh. Thriller, the head coach was Ted Marchibroda. Ted Marchibroda was the Baltimore Ravens' first head coach ever in 96. That lasted 2 seasons, and then they brought in Brian Billick. He was there for a minute, and then they brought in John Hardballs, and he's still there. So, they have longevity as well, guys. 30 years existing, 3 coaches. They're built very similar to the Steelers are, and it's not by design, or it's by design, believe me. If you want to try to compete in your division, you gotta be that division, and Baltimore built that team to compete with the Steelers from top to bottom. No two ways about that, and it's worked out to a T. Tyrone says this, I hope Jalen Ramsey picks off Lamar like Troy Polamalu did Flacco. Take it to the crib. Hell yeah, my man. Also, Bingo says, Teddy Enchilada. But yes, Ted Marchibroda, guys, was the very first coach of the Baltimore Ravens back in 1996, and he was the coach that took the Indianapolis Colts to the AFC Championship game 1 year prior, just months prior to that, actually, and the Steelers win that 20-16 in a thriller with a Hail Mary thrown by Jim Harbaugh in the end of that game that could have went either way. Could have sent the Colts to the Super Bowl. Also, what do we got, guys? The Pittsburgh Penguins, they did win. They won the other night. Of course, we weren't able to talk about it yesterday. The Penguins won 5-1 over the Flyers. It's always great beating up on the Flyers. They're back at it on Thursday as they'll be traveling to Tampa Bay to take on the Lightning. Also, I do want to throw this out here real quick. I have this is what your local, if I can find it. Oh, here it is. All right. So this, guys, I do talk about high school football here on the show. This is the matchups for this coming weekend because it is the state finals. So I do feel obliged to talk about this briefly. In single A, Clairton, they will be playing Bishop Guilfoyle tomorrow at 1:00. And then in 4A, Twin Valley, the team that beat out Aliquippa, they'll be taking on Southern Lehigh. That's at 4:00 tomorrow. On Friday, 2A, Farrell, the Farrell Steelers, they take on Southern Columbia, which should be one hell of a game in high school football. 5A, Bishop McDevitt will be taking on Roman Catholic. That's at 7:00 on Friday. And then Saturday, the 2 games are this: 3A, Avonworth versus Northwestern Lehigh. That's a 1:00 start. And then the 7:00 start is Pittsburgh Central Catholic, of course, where Dan Marino went to high school, versus LaSalle College. So this is for this is for everything, guys. Our teams win. They bring home state gold to the west side, if you will. Again, I see Clairton coming from our side, Farrell, Avonworth, and Central Catholic. So if those 4 teams could get a little bit, can have one more week of success, they'll be bringing the hardware back to the west side, and we certainly keep rooting on our young men as they do go into their state championship games tomorrow, Friday, and Saturday. Again, tomorrow we'll be back at our regular time. We got picks tomorrow. Derpy will be by, maybe Finch. We'll see what's going on. We got to get those picks in. Do not forget to get your CBS pick'ems in. Everybody did very well last week. I don't want to see anybody miss out. So make sure you get in and get at least your Thursday game in. And then also, I think, yeah, I guess it will go right till Sunday. There's no games in between. That was just this week. So be sure to get in and get them CBS pick'ems in. If you get a chance, swing over to check out any of our social media, guys. We are all over the internet, have plenty of social media presence. Go check us out at Facebook, at X, formerly known as Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and even TikTok. Swing by, hit the follow button, like something, and keep up with what the two Dum Yinzers are up to on a day-to-day basis. Also, if you haven't had a chance yet, hit the like button down below. You could also sub if you haven't, share, and comment down below if you like. It would help us out. It all goes into the algorithm and does algorithm things, and it helps us. That's all I know. If you have a chance to hit them, that will certainly help. We appreciate it. And finally, I do want to say this, guys. It's been a good week for the show. We do have to get ready for the Ravens, though. This is Ravens week, and anything that it's, you don't want to think about losing this game. So maybe stop by and get yourself a 6-pack, get yourself a case, whatever you do, stop by and get yourself some Duquesne Pilsner, this delicious beer that we always have on hand in the studio. These guys at Duquesne Pilsner, they go out of their way to make sure they include us in all their promotions, and we appreciate them greatly. We thank you to the guys over at Duquesne Pilsner. This beer made right here in Pittsburgh, and right on the can it says grab a Duke. So do grab yourself a Duke, guys. Maybe to get you through the week, or if not to get you through the week, maybe for the Steeler game on Sunday. Duquesne Pilsner, grab a Duke. And finally, I do want to say thank you, everybody, for coming and hanging out and checking us out today. We greatly appreciate each and every one of you. We truly, honestly do. We wouldn't do it without you. Thank you so much, each and every one of you. You truly are the bloodline of this show. I make sure to mention it every day. I want to say thank you to the board. You guys always keep things interesting on the board. Welcome to the new names and faces as well on the board. Glad to have you. Glad to see you. And everybody at home. Maybe you have your earbuds in. Maybe you have your pods. Whatever the case may be, you're at the gym, work, wherever, the car, you're listening, watching. Thank you too. Tyrone said he's going to smoke us in the picks, and I hope you do, man. Hey, you're doing better than some of the people that's been here, Mike. And listen, I'm not going to talk any shit, but I hope you do. But make sure you do not forget to get over and get those picks in. Absolutely, Jamal, we'll get that to you, dude. We'll get it to you one way. Even if you go right outside of here on our main YouTube page, right at the top in the descriptions, there's a blue link, and one of them is the CBS Pick'em. So if you do go in, just click on that right on our main page, click on our logo, and then it'll be right at the top. So if you click on that, it'll take you right in. If not, I'll certainly make sure we get that to you. Just let me know. Cody wasn't even here to brag that much, Lindsay. I know that's one thing that I thought we were going to get today was a lot of bragging by Cody and a lot of the losers and all this. But you know what? He wasn't available. I'm sure he'll make it up in his own Cody way. Hot Tub Ted, Bingo saying about Marchabroda. Sweaty Teddy, John is calling him as well. Phil the Steel says, cheers, Watt fans. Teflon Don can go to the motherfucking vanilla list. Tyrone, watch college football Saturday. Good ass games. Also, guys, a lot of people came down on me this offseason because I liked Arch Manning. I said, how can you go against the family? But you know what? Arch went out there and beat the number 3 Texas A&M this past weekend, guys. Some big wins against ranked teams this year. So whether or not he comes out this year, which I don't think he will, somebody to keep in the crosshairs for sure, as he's coming along a little bit better than he looked early on. What else? You so old? I'm old. I do want to say also one more time, again, thank you so much to Garrett Webster. It was great having you on, my friend, and I hope to get to talk to you again soon. Garrett Webster, everybody, was a special guest today. He was supposed to come on last week, and we had to we switched it out because the holiday. So it was supposed to be then yesterday, and then there was the issues with the internet with Xfinity. So again, we finally got my man on. It was nice to talk to Garrett Webster, get some inside scoop. I mean, of course, he came from the nuts of a Pittsburgh Steeler, great Hall of Famer, straight out the sack. And there it is. Phil still says that Richard loser. We knew that was coming. Bingo says already a better college resume than Shador. Just saying, old as dirt. guys, I do want to say one more time, thank you so much. You guys are always awesome. Can't wait to get back tomorrow to do it again. We will be back at our regular time tomorrow to go over all this and so much more, guys, and get ready for this Pittsburgh Steelers Baltimore Raven division showdown on Sunday, 1 o'clock in Baltimore. The Steelers coming into this game 6-6. The Ravens 6-6. The Ravens are 6.5-point favorites, and it's on like Donkey Kong. So, guys, we'll be back tomorrow. I think we're gonna start pushing back the the toxicity, and we're gonna start figuring out putting the tire to the road. I guess they call it, right? The rubber to the road. I don't know if that's what it is, but I know what I'm thinking. And we're going to figure out what it is we got to do to beat this team and how to continue this season and win football games and maybe even get that win in January. So tomorrow we have all that and a lot more. So we hope to see everybody back then. Tyrone, no, you're awesome, brother. Guys, I thank you so much. Phil, you as well, my man. You guys, Tortilla, I couldn't do it without you guys. You're amazing. Thank you so much. Pat yourselves on the back, would you? And for us here at the Two Dum Yinzers, we'll be back tomorrow at our regular time to do it all over again. I cannot wait. I cannot wait to figure out what it is we have to do to get this win Sunday and also continue to play in January. I think it's possible. I do think it's possible. So we'll turn the tides tomorrow and get into that and so much more here on the Two Dum Yinzers show, guys. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic hump day, if you will. Stay safe, behave, and we'll see you back at our regular time tomorrow. Everybody have a great hump day. For the Two Dum Yinzers, for Vanilla, for Garrett Webster, for myself, the Two Dum Yinzers, have a great Wednesday. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye. Gang, gang.